Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing iRacing GT3 Championship Season 2, as brought to you in collaboration with the Apex Racing Academy and Next Level Racing. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back after the first of the two mid-season breaks. We're now on to round number 5, and today we are at the circuit des 24 Hours de Mans, or in short, the circuit known most figuratively as Le Mans. We've got the upcoming real-world 24-hour of Le Mans endurance race this weekend, and we thought it was only appropriate to have this circuit featured on the calendar just days before the real-world event is about to get underway. With that, of course, we have our standard schedule tonight. We are back with the full schedule of racing in the GT3 cars at 8 o'clock this evening. It's 8 o'clock British Summer Time, or UTC +1. We'll be getting underway with the qualifying session for 15 minutes to determine who will be lining up on the front row of our grid and all the way down to the back row, of course. And then we will commence the opening 15-minute sprint race at 8:15 this evening, and that will be a 15-minute race. No strategy, it's simply a sprint to the finish to see who can score the maximum number of points in that race. And then we'll take a brief break before returning for the 60-minute feature race, the 60-minute feature race, whereby there'll be the strategic element in there, and it'll be an alternative challenge for our drivers, and everybody will be looking to do their utmost to achieve the best possible point scores in both races. For the uninitiated, do remember that the number of points available to our drivers in both the sprint race and the feature race are identical. There is no preference for one or two of the races. It is purely the case that you turn up to every race to try and get the best possible points all. Now, of course, having introduced our prime partners of Apex Racing Academy and also Next Level Racing, it's also worth pointing out that tonight your commentary will be brought to you by Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britney Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be in the commentary box all evening bringing you all the action as it transpires. And you can watch this official broadcast via 3 media platforms. Firstly, the official NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel, that's NXTGEN Racing on YouTube. Alternatively, the official NXTGEN Racing Facebook group, that's NXTGEN Racing on Facebook, or if you're looking to view it through Twitch, you can watch on Twitch at my own personal Twitch channel, that's TX141 on Twitch. But coming back to our partners, let's introduce them, and let's start off with Apex Racing Academy. Who are they? So Apex Racing Academy is not just a setup shop. They are dedicated to making you better at iRacing with services, access to drivers and features not found on other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connecting with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week they host multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of group coaching sessions. In partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synced directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for setup, replay or ghost files. The data is right there when you turn the simulator on. If you're interested, why not sign up at apexracingacademy.com today. That's apexracingac.com today. That's one of our two partners, and then we also have to introduce, of course, Next Level Racing. Now, founded in 2009, Next Level Racing is the world's leading simulation brand, revolutionising simulation with its industry-leading product range, and with a clear focus on innovation and quality to meet the demanding needs of sim racers. Next Level Racing's designs and technology shall take your sim racing experience to the next level. If you want to know more about their products, be sure to head to their official website, that's nextlevelracing.com today for further information. That's nextlevelracing.com. Now, of course, we're very grateful to have our partners on board, without whom this would not be possible, as it's not just the case it's the NXTGEN Racing team bringing you all this. We bring it in collaboration with our partners. We're all in it together. And speaking about being in it together, the championship definitely has been one where everybody is coming together at a rapid rate. So we come away from talking about our sponsors to looking at the standings. So after the opening 4 rounds of this 12-round calendar, we can see that after the first third of the season in the Pro Class firstly, Billy Fletcher currently leading with 282 points, and this is not considering drop scores, those will come in at a later date. We haven't done enough races yet to worry significantly about drop scores, but what you can see, Billy Fletcher really paving the way right now on 282 points, and really has been the driver who has been in form and up there, being the best of the best in that Pro category. However, we do have Harry Melvin in second place, chasing after him 194 points at the moment, and after that strong finish at Long Beach last time out, the win in the feature race, you can imagine that Melvin is the one who wants to try and become the tip of the spear that is charging after Fletcher. However, let's not discount the fact we've got a three-way battle starting to erupt for third place, with Paul King currently leading out on 132 points. Both King and also Yakov Boshov both having a difficult time at the Long Beach circuit last time out, with Boshov coming away on the similar points with King, both of them picking up in the end 31 points, albeit symmetrically opposed, and Boshov on those 123 points right now, and he's got himself a gap of 12 points to Kenny Herrimans. But we look further down the order, and what we can also see within the Pro category, some drivers who were able to pick up good points last time out at Long Beach but have had difficulty over the season so far. Particularly in P12, Andrew Lovesey, and P13, Ed Lack. The two of them very close together right now, 7 points separating Lovesey and Lack, with Lack being on 50 points, Lovesey on 57, and both drivers scoring very well at the American circuit 2 weeks ago. And then we can see down there in P20, Jamie Dory having a tough season so far with only 10 points to his name, but looking to pick things up as of today. Meanwhile, in the amateur class, we can see that it's a bit of a different picture, whereby Long Beach provide us with an opportunity to bring everybody together. Particularly at the top, with George Bland leading on 204 points at the moment, and a very strong performance by George Bland at the Long Beach circuit. Well, the fact he picked up the fastest lap in both races 1 and race 2. He also picked up pole position and the win in the sprint race, meaning he got a huge points, or 60 points from that one race alone, and 11 points from the feature race. The feature race not working out in the favour of the McLaren driver, and as a result, that means he's only got a 5-point gap to second place man Ollie Wayne on 199 points, who picked up the win. A dominant display in the feature race in the Mercedes, of course. But the difficulty tonight is that Wayne will not be here at the French circuit. He's unable to make it, so as a result, this is an opportunity for Bland to try and pull away. Alternatively, for another driver such as Mikkel Andreasen in P3 on 137 points, or Jochen Sigurd in P4 on 123 points to close the gap to the leaders. But looking further down, we can see that we have got a very tight pack in the battle for the top 5. And looking outside of the top 5 as well, Matthew Evans in P8 on 88 points, with those 35 points gained from the feature race. It's been a difficult season so far for Evans, where we've seen a rather difficult display of performances, some inconsistencies there, and it didn't quite work out in terms of his initial choice of car when he picked the Porsche going into the season. And we do know that he dropped the scores when he switched away from the Porsche to his BMW. So now we're expecting Evans to try and bounce back after making a precautionary car switch, whereby the drivers are allotted a car switch at the midway point of the season, but Evans taking that switch much earlier and having to drop a set of results as a result of that. And then looking even further down, we can see Tom Delaney there in P15 being chased by Mark Sykes. 5 points between them there, with Delaney on 27, Sykes on 22. And Gareth Mills down in P19, last of our placed amateur drivers at the moment on 13 points. Mills picking up the occasional point and looking to continue. He's a consistent driver, it should be pointed out. Perhaps not just got the pace of some of the others yet, but it's all part of learning experience. And indeed, Mills coming stronger and stronger as the races go on. So, and talked about our classes, let's take a look at the track then. Well, as we can see, and as we mentioned earlier, we're at the Circuit de 24 de Mans, and it's in the Le Mans region, Pays de la Flore, France. A lovely circuit, a circuit steeped in history throughout the years for the last 5 decades, if not even longer than that, and again, a circuit which year on year produces fantastic racing. Consisting of 33 corners, as shown in this image provided to us by the simracingwiki.com, we're grateful to the guys there, and a circuit which has multiple challenging circuits, and of course we are running the current layout, which means the Mulsanne Straight is cut up into 3 partitions, with those partitions being separated by the 2 Mulsanne chicanes. Plenty of corners here where things can go wrong, whether it be the S's of turns 5, 6 and 7, Tetra Ridge of turn 8, a very tricky corner, the run down towards Mulsanne Corner at turns 14 and 15, Indianapolis and Arnage, that's the sequence from 18 to 20, or indeed the run through the 3 sets of curves known as the Porsche curves from turns 23 to 26, then the Corvette or the Chevrolet curves from 27 to 29, and then the Ford curves or the Ford chicanes as they're also known from 30 to 33. Plenty of very tricky corners here. And as we can see in the reference that as brought to you by Billy Fletcher in one of the final practice sessions leading up to tonight, it was a very difficult time during the course of the practice sessions for a lot of our drivers, as we see Fletcher making his way through. So taking you through Fletcher's lap, then making his way through turn number 1 right now, going into what is known as the Dunlop chicane here, and as he stamps on the anchors there, going all the way down towards second gear in the Lamborghini, going through turns 2 and 3, then getting on the power as soon as possible out of turn 3, pretty much straight line in the exit there, now through 4 and into the right hander of 5 before coming into the left into right combination of 6 and 7 here. And as he does so, you can see coming down to third gear and having to really balance the throttle. He wants to get the maximum possible power output out of turn 8 in the run up towards Tetcherugi, and as he goes into the right hander here, going across the apex and using the full width of the circuit. Track limits being something that many of our drivers are concerned about tonight, and as he makes his way charging down the Mulsanne straight right now, it will feel like an eternity before he gets to the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, but once he gets there, I can assure you in top gear right now, it is a very heavy braking zone and he has to be ready for it. So continuing to build up speed, placing the car on the left hand side here, getting it strategically set up so that way he's got the full width of entry into the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. He'll be looking to brake at approximately 200 metres before the corner, and as he does, he'll be coming down through those gears as rapidly as possible, trail braking into the chicane and coming down to second for his core apex before getting back on that throttle as quickly as possible and letting the car flow over to the left hand side slightly before moving it very gradually over to the right hand side here, setting himself up well for the run down towards the second of the chicanes. Again, another long run here, the difference this time being that he's not going to build up quite as much speed in the long run down towards the second of the chicanes down the Mulsanne straight here. What with the fact you have a lower exit speed out of the first Mulsanne chicane compared to Tetcherugi much earlier on, but still looking for that braking marker at approximately 125 metres and trail braking in once again here before snapping it onto that right hand apex, and you can see using those curves to try and get the car to rotate as rapidly as possible through the corner, so that way you can get on the power and go charging down. Straight line speed is so critical here, and the ability to build up as rapidly as possible, getting on the accelerator is going to be the difference between a pole position lap or one that puts you in the top 5. And as he makes his way now down towards Mulsanne corner here, you'll see it's the gradual right kink into the hard right hairpin. He'll go into this kink and get on the brakes as he's going for it, using the full cut over to the left hand side in order to widen the apex of the Mulsanne corner and catching it very nicely there. It almost looked as though it was fluid motion there, as though it was a bathtub of water, and just making that water go round the corner very majestically as he now charges down the long straight down towards Indianapolis. Another straight whereby you can lose your concentration, you can forget you're on a circuit with 33 corners as he continues to make his way through the 2 right hand kinks before coming down to Indianapolis. Turn 18 through to 20 of weights here, and as we're going to see, he's going to trail brake in on turn 18, just gradually bring the car's speed down to 5th gear, using a snap downshift there to finish the rotation through turn 18 before going down to 2nd gear for the core part of Indianapolis before heading up towards Arnage. Now into turn 20 he goes, and in Arnage, 1st gear here, a very tricky corner Arnage with the fact it's got a camber change, plus also that apex is much tighter than it looks. The angle and the amount of rotation the car needs to achieve, because the exit bar on the left hand side is prominent, it sticks out and you can't use that as a runoff here because you'll be going into the tyre barrier. But now charging down towards the Porsche curves here, you're going to see this is all about maintaining speed and momentum as he goes into the first right in the sequence, and we'll note that he's going to come down to 5th gear and then flick the car in towards the apex here before getting on that power as soon as he feels comfortable, and then switching the car from right to left here in order to get the best possible conservation of momentum through the double left-hander before back into the right-hander to complete the Porsche curves here, staying nice and tight to that apex before flicking back over to the right side into the left for what is the start of the Chevrolet curves, and then completing them with the small right into left kink here where you can be completely flat out. As qualifying is due to get underway very shortly, so we'll see a lot of this in qualifying, but now coming up towards the Ford chicanes here, he's going to use the pit entry there to widen the entry, literally straight line in the first of the 2 corners, and then the final 2 corners he's got to come all the way down to 2nd gear and then power out on the runoff zone, power out on the out exit curve there. A lovely lap by Billy Fletcher, and one we can expect to be perhaps mirrored by him today on circuit. Now, as for our rules tonight, all of our drivers will be required to run the iRacing medium downforce setup on their car, and as always in the sprint race, each driver has 1 fast repair available. And in the feature race, our drivers will have 1 fast repair as well, but their starting fuel loads will be restricted to 75% for the start of the race, which means they do have to make a pit stop at some point to take on fuel. However, whether they change tyres or not is entirely optional. And those are the rules that our drivers must abide by. And every corner is an overtaking corner here, arguably, although some less advised than others. But we do not have any specific overtaking rules in place, unlike in round 4 at Long Beach. So without further ado, let's hop back to our live cameras. I believe qualifying will be getting underway very soon, ladies and gentlemen. And when it does, we'll be bringing you all of the action with regards to how our drivers are performing. We're just waiting for that countdown to finish. 1 more minute to go as everybody is just getting in their final sets of laps right now before we go underway, and that gives us a brilliant opportunity to check in with you guys and girls in the chat. And we can see there we've got Nesta Major 98 there on the Twitch chat saying hello, and hello to you, Nesta. Hope you're doing well today. And to all of you tuning in, even if you're not messaging us in our chats, feel free to say hi. Don't be shy if you have access to, but if not, I hope you're having a great week so far. What of it being a Wednesday, you're halfway through the week, and we've got 2 more working days to go before the weekend, and plenty of racing action to come as we see everybody continue to just wrap up here. And we see Mark Baker right now making his way down towards the Mulsanne corner in the Ferrari. We've also there got Kurt Van Hoenacker tuning in on YouTube, wishing everybody good luck. He's one of our drivers, of course, Van Hoenacker. Not able to make today, unfortunately, which is a shame, Van Hoenacker. But still, we look forward to having you back out on circuit when you are able to. And we've also got Katie Eames there, reminding me every Wednesday not to forget to breathe. It should be a good race night indeed. Thank you, Katie. We do appreciate it. And well, I do appreciate it. And yes, it should be a cracker tonight. As we also say hello to Matt Emmons there, racing in our amateur class, of course, Matt. And we'll be looking forward to seeing what he's able to pull off as we now get the switch over to qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. So all of our drivers will now be getting ready to go. You can see them all there pulling up in the pit lane, and I believe indeed we have got a good number of drivers immediately charging out. We've got a Porsche that's on the charge. Without further ado, qualifying is on the way. 15 minutes. Who's going to be on pole? Let's find out as everybody goes on the attack around the circuit. We can see some drivers side by side coming out the pit lane. In fact, some phased into one another right now, but they will settle it down there as they make their way through the Dunlop chicane and head up towards turns 4, 5 and 6. Now, with regards to qualifying, one of the big questions that some of you guys and girls may be wondering at home is, what about slipstream? And what I mean by that is down the Mulsanne straight and also the straight that leads up towards Indianapolis, drivers are definitely going to want to use the slipstream of other drivers in order to make significant gains, and that is very true. What our drivers have not been warned about the usage of slipstream. They are permitted to use it, but at the same time it is a case that drivers have been told to be sensible. Just drive in a sporting manner, and if you are going to use the slipstream of another driver, do it in a manner whereby you're not going to impede their lap, because everybody is to assume that the driver is on a fast lap unless it is very clear the driver is not on a fast lap currently. And we can see everybody immediately tucking into one another slipstream here, and we're looking at Jeremy DeBova here in particular, the pro driver in the Porsche in the centre of your picture right now, making his way through the first of the Mulsanne chicanes here. And I did have the opportunity to catch up with Jeremy going into tonight, and what Jeremy was telling me is that for tonight the testing that he's done has proven to be okay, and at the moment he feels that he's going to do well at Le Mans. He hopes he can do better in qualifying, however, and this is something that he's felt on post-analysis of his first third of the season, we should say, is that his qualifying has been a problem, whereby he's found in qualifying that he's been underperforming, and as a result he's had to make up for the deficit in qualifying in the races. He's been able to get strong results in the races, but he feels as though a better qualifying session will lead to better potential in the races. So he's going to push tonight in order to try and get a better qualifying session in, and he's never going to give up, and he hopes he can do a good race tonight indeed. Great attitude there from Jeremy, and we look forward to seeing what he's able to pull off. Unfortunately, his son Navarro DeBova will not be racing tonight. Navarro not available to race, but we can expect Navarro to be back at round number 6 next week. So in the meantime, it's just going to be one member of the DeBova family. It will be the father, not the son, and he'll be making his way down the straight towards Indianapolis right now, as we can see everybody making their way around. We've got Colin Martin here, who has made his way just now through Mulsanne corner here and heading all the way down. We can see drivers weaving from side to side as well, trying to get some tyre temperatures in here, and that means as a result they will be looking to go for a couple of good flying laps. We've only got a limited number of laps here, given the fact that the lap time, the best lap times we're expecting are slightly sub 4 minutes. So when you look at that 15-minute window, you can imagine that in most cases it will be a situation whereby drivers are only able to get in approximately 2 to 3 solid qualifying laps here. Perhaps a fourth one if they're fortunate, but it's normally 2 to 3, and so every lap counts, and giving yourself that space on circuit is going to be critical to that opportunity to qualify well, as all our drivers are making their way right now down through the sequence of Indianapolis Arnage. We can see there, I believe that is what looks to be a Lamborghini going a little bit deep out of Arnage corner there. And we see Mark Baker here a little bit further back, making his way out of Arnage corner, chasing after Jochen Seeger. Ahead of him, the Jägermeister BMW at the head of your camera there. And then we can see we have got the bright red Ferrari of Mark Baker just behind him, making its way up towards the Porsche curves. But meanwhile, as we take a look around, we can see here we have got Matt Emmons in the MV Motors machine here, making his way through the Porsche curves. Of course, that switched the BMW into a car that he's more comfortable with. And we have also recently had a slight change to the balance of performance in the GT3 category of iRacing, from what I understand. And the key things that I've heard thus far is that the BMW is a bit more stable compared to how it used to be, as he goes a bit wide there. He's going to wear those track limits coming out of the Chevrolet curves. And also on top of that, the McLaren has been hit a little bit in terms of its performance. It's a little bit slower right now, and that could be a factor which some of our drivers will be very wary of. As we see, we've also got Ben Henderson here making his way around the circuit. Ben Henderson joining us as of tonight, so he's a newcomer to the series as he's going on to his opening flying lap right now. And we can see him charging all the way around the Quantum Racing machine there, making its way down towards what is the sequence of corners leading up to Tetra Rouge. So he's going through turns 6 and 7 right now and heading up towards Tetra Rouge. And as he does so here, we're just going to make sure that no warnings or anything are coming in from our stewards, making sure that we have got all the information and there's no sort of warnings with regards to any of our drives. So just give us 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, to get that confirmed. I do not believe there is anything major to report at this point, so it is all good, as we see Henderson making his way now down towards the first Mulsanne chicane. Nothing to report from race control at the moment, so everybody just on their qualifying laps and doing everything they can as it currently stands. And we see Henderson making his way, getting a little bit wide there coming out the first chicane, as we look a little bit further up to Didi Vlaming, who's just made his way across the timeline to go on to his opening flying lap here. The Porsche driver, of course, making his way through and through. The Pro category driver charging all the way up towards turns 2 and 3 right now. And as we check in with the chat from Kevin Smith on Facebook, this should be an interesting race of the fastest and some amazing slipstream racing. Yes, definitely slipstream is going to be a huge factor here. And as for K-Teams, is the car change available next time out with no penalty if they do want to change? I believe so. I believe it is as of round 6, or after round 6, we are expecting that car change to be made available. One car change is made available. It is at that halfway point, though, or around the halfway point. And any further changes, of course, there will be a penalty. But from what I've been hearing from most drivers down in the paddock, of course, they don't want to give away the ultimate game because of the fact that it could give away some potential insights, as Vlaming has withdrawn. Oh, goodness me, Vlaming getting it wrong when he's come out of the pits. Like a ball in a china shop there, in all honesty, with the fact he's come through turn 2 on cold tyres and the rear end's just completely snapped. And Jack Wyborn as well has just left the pit lane. So I believe Wyborn having a bit of a difficult qualifying session as well as he makes his way through. And we've still got all our drivers making their way around the circuit right now. As we see there, we've got George Bland at the forefront of the camera, making his way down towards what is Indianapolis right now. And of course, Bland, our leader within the amateur class on those 204 points. And whilst I didn't get the opportunity to catch up with Bland before he got in the car today, he did look very fiercely determined as he's getting into the car to be trying to get the best possible result. And we know Bland really demonstrated to everybody last time out at Long Beach his credentials to be at the top of that amateur class and really competing with a good number of the pros at Long Beach. And can he do that again here today in the McLaren at Le Mans? He's got all the signs pointing that he can do. He was looking rather promising in the practice sessions from what we heard. Rumours down at the paddock that Bland was looking very fast. And if anything, his driving approach was less than his name. It was much more spectacular. It was not Bland, but as he makes his way charging down towards what is now the Porsche curves here, looking smooth so far is the Briton as he continues to make his way through. Jaco Boshoff, meanwhile, we can see there we've got the Ignium Racing machines, all three of them nose down. Then we've got one car that's separating another two of them. They're all making their way through our nod right now in sequence. It's almost as if they're going for a team photo shoot here. But we are just waiting for some of those qualifying times to come in, ladies and gentlemen. And I believe some of our first qualifying times will be coming in very shortly. And Billy Fletcher's got it very wrong. What has happened to Fletcher here? Well, something has gone horrendously wrong as he ran towards that timing line. But the first times are now coming out. I think Fletcher's made a mistake on the final corner, and that has completely compromised that. A lot of smoke up there, and we are not able to quite catch that. But Fletcher definitely having a mistake. But the first time's now coming in, and we can see it's Oystein Hereford who has managed to get the provisional pole so far of a 3:58.299. We then got Jeremy DeBova right now, who doing a very good job in the Porsche there, only a 10th off. And remember, when you think about the laps here, folks, it's a 4-minute lap approximately. So to be a 10th off after 4 minutes, that shows you just how fierce the competition is here. As we see more times coming in right now. And if I take a look down at my timing sheets, we have got a couple more drivers coming in. We just have Mikkel Andreasen set a time. That's P5, the fastest amateur time so far. A 4-minute flat .214. As we see, we've got Paul King and Jaco Boshoff coming through. And Matt Caruana coming through here. And Matt, in the mix of those Ignium Sport Racing drivers there, of course he's not one of those guys in that team. We can see a 3:56.1 really setting the pace there, 2.2 seconds faster than anybody else thus far. And I do think he has picked up a significant toe off of the Lamborghinis ahead of him. The Lamborghinis all looking strong, and we did see that in the season opener at Daytona, whereby the Lamborghini did seem to have really worked well on that medium downforce, particularly on the straights, and when it's got a slipstream it seems to absolutely fly. And you can see it. Look at how much speed he is carrying through Tetra Rouge now to the Mulsanne straight. Now here, surely he's going to be in a situation where he's either got to try and play the old game of leapfrog compared to the drivers ahead of him and try and get himself through. He's got to thread the needle here, as we can see that everybody's sort of tripping over one another, and the Ignium Motorsport drivers do not want to give up the formation. I think they're rolling it on a rotating formation in terms of one driver is the head of the slipstream train and then another. But you can see how Caruana has tucked in between the two drivers here, and they're trying to use one another slipstream to improve the laps as much as possible. And this is what our drivers have got to be careful about in qualifying, because if they get too close to one another and then under brake and a driver brakes even slightly earlier than perhaps anticipated, that can lead to a huge incident and qualifying sessions being completely compromised. Now, speaking about catching up with our drivers, we did have a chance to catch up with some other drivers as they were making their way down towards their cars or into their cars. Mark Sykes here, who currently has not set an indicative lap time, but you can see he's making his way right now through the right into left combination. That is the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. And what Sykes was telling me as he's getting into the car is that he quite likes Le Mans as a track, and as usual he just wants to bring the car home in both races. A man of a few words going into this one, but I think it's the same picture time and time again, just looking to put in a good result. But right now, no more updates to our timing screens as it currently stands, and as he makes his way down towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes here. Other drivers who we did have a chance to speak to, we did have a chat to one of the fan favourites, and I know that a good number of members from the Slow and Steady race. Oh, goodness me, and there has been a major incident further back there, and that is Caruana. And who else was involved in it? Let's take a look. So into the braking zone, and the Ignium Motorsport machine there, one of them, that is the number 25 car, and I can tell you in terms of 25, that was Jaco Boshoff in a collision with him, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is why slipstreaming qualifying can be so dangerous here, because it only takes one driver to misread the position there. And I'm not going to act as a steward here, but what it did look like from that camera angle was that Matt Caruana was trying to take a wide angle into the Mulsanne corner, and as a result of that, it was misinterpreted by Boshoff potentially. We're looking at Boshoff right now as he's making his way back out into the circuit, and he's going to try and squeeze the car into one more lap. I don't think he's going to have time to get it round, so I think his current time, which is that 3:59.8, is going to be his only qualifying time he sets now. I think it was the case that Boshoff simply misinterpreted what Caruana was trying to do, and that's why Caruana essentially turned in on him, even though Boshoff was trying to go down the inside of him, and that is what can really happen, and that's why slipstream qualifying can be so tricky for drivers. It's why, personally, in my experience of sim racing, I'm not a fan of slipstream qualifying in terms of trying to use the slipstream, but it works out for some drivers, and we see that in clear air. Billy Fletcher setting a 3:57.1 at 4.5. Fletcher putting in a strong lap there, and indeed 1 second off of Caruana's provisional pole time, as we've got a load of smoke over the Dunlop chicane. I think that's just somebody warming up their tyres there, or getting it very wrong under braking and having a major lockup. But Fletcher will go for one more lap. And speaking of Fletcher, when I had the chance to catch him getting into the Lamborghini, he was saying it's going to be a tough race tonight, running medium downforce, as the draft will be extremely strong. And Fletcher very cognizant of the dangers of the downforce and the slipstream here as he makes his way into Tetra Rouge. And I think we can expect that he's going to try and make an early breakaway in this race, because if we have the big slipstream battles in the run down towards the Mulsanne chicane, you can imagine he will be right in the thick of it. Now, meanwhile, one driver who has improved, he's just come across that timeline, another one of the NXTGEN Motorsport drivers, is Stephen Norman, as he makes his way up into turn number 2 here. And we can see that right now, currently sat on a 3:59.15, a good qualifying lap here. He is a sizable margin off of that pole lap, the 3:56.1, but as we said earlier, it may be the case that Norman has not done the lap with as much slipstream as Caruana, although Caruana, to be fair, would have had to have nailed the lap without slipstream as well in order to be able to then use the slipstream to get the time up as much as he possibly has. So right now, as we've only got 1.5 minutes left of this qualifying session, things definitely are looking very tight between our drivers, as we really are counting down towards the end of the session. And in terms of other drivers to watch out for, of course, we do have Ben Hicks here, another one of the NXTGEN Motorsport drivers, who, when I had the chance to speak to him as he was waiting to get into the car whilst the car was being serviced, he was saying that he was looking forward to tonight. It's great to be racing down such an iconic circuit, and judging by test, he thinks he's a little bit off the overall pace, but he should be focusing on just keeping up with the pack and trying to get some decent results. So far, he seems to do okay in one race or the other, so he'd love to come away with points in both the sprint and the feature race tonight. And we have seen that from Hicks over the course of the opening third of the season. In each round, he seemed to have one race where he was strong and one race where he struggled, and he's going to try and put that to bed tonight and achieve a more consistent performance across both races. Of course, he'll want points, finishes in both races. He won't want to be consistently out of the points, and I'm sure he doesn't have that thought running through his mind right now as he makes his way down towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes here. And everybody right now on lap, as we see that where it's the case that Wyborn is just coming across the timeline right now, and I believe Jack Wyborn setting his first target qualifying lap of the session. He will have one more available to him as he comes out of the final corner here. And what's this going to be from Wyborn? The Briton sets in the end, as we're waiting for his time to cut. It's a 4:08.384 in the Ferrari, and that's the slowest of the times set so far, by 1.2 seconds off of Gareth Mills. But again, it's probably an experience for a lot of drivers. They're just getting their foot in with regards to driving around the legendary Le Mans circuit, and I can appreciate that at 1.2 seconds off of Gareth Mills, I would treat that as the equivalent to, say, 0.3 of a second on a much shorter circuit, because this is a very long circuit and a very challenging circuit, no doubt. As we see Jeremy DeBova here making his way through what is Indianapolis into Arnage right now, and he is currently in P4. He is 7/10 off of P3 man Oystein Hereford as he makes his way out of Arnage and charges down towards the Porsche curves here. The curves which should be very comfortable in this car, as we see Nigel Stock improves to a 4:0.251 there. A very strong lap there by Stock. In fact, that's P3 in the amateur class, and that's P13 overall, which has got him ahead of the likes of Ben Hicks and Dirk Bouts, who are both the pro drivers, of course, and Verlaming in P18 as qualifying starts to really wrap up now. Everybody's on their final lap or has completed their final lap, and we're just taking a look around to see if there's any other drivers right now who are putting in times. We've got Nokia here, Jürgen Nokia coming around, making his way down the run towards what is Indianapolis here, and currently not looking too strong on this lap. His best so far has been a 4:3.26, and that's put him only a P20. The amateur driver quite a way off of the rest of the pace in the amateur group, although he has got some drivers around him such as Porter and Mills to contend with. And then looking further down, well, we have got the best part of approximately 30 drivers who are taking part in the racing tonight. We haven't got quite the full field. That's understandable due to the summer holidays and drivers having other personal commitments. As we see, Kenny Herriman sets his final lap, and it's good enough for provisional P4 there, and that is a 3:57.86. Very strong work from the Porsche driver, and we saw a lot of Herrimans. We saw a very good performance from Herrimans last time out at Long Beach, and in fact, he's really come alive in rounds 3 and 4 in particular, and this could be his one, as we see Sigurd there, just out of camera shot, improving and putting himself P16 overall, and that is P4 in class. As we also see there, Ben Hicks sets an improving lap on that very last one there. He's gone P10. We're 3:59.751 as we've still got drivers coming through, and that's Gareth Mills coming across the line right now. And as we look to Gareth Mills here, we can see he does improve to a 4:04.876 as Harry Melvin does gain time, a 3:57.840. That demotes Herriman's down to P5 overall and in the Pro class. And I believe that, ladies and gentlemen, unless I'm very much mistaken, is almost the end of qualifying. We've still got a couple more drivers coming through here, but as you can see, because it's such a long lap, the qualifying session does go on for a long period of time right now. As we see, Delaney comes across the line here, and he does very well, and Sykes improves as well. So Delaney did improve to what was P8 in his class, but Sykes jumps him into P7, as we can see that Sykes there with a good lap in the Lamborghini, and we've only got a couple more drives to come through right now. Here's Vlaming as he makes his way through all those, gone wide there out of one of the Chevrolet curbs, and I believe that was turn 26. That may mean that the lap has been disallowed as a result. They are very, very particular here with track limits at Le Mans because of how the circuit, you can gain so much time by having even the smallest of runoffs here. But we're just going to see what Vlaming does as he comes across the line here. The Belgian driver comes out the final corner, goes out onto the gravel, and the car gets hooked into the wall. That's very unfortunate for Vlaming. They're going to have to repair that, but that is qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, and it is Matt Caruana who takes pole overall with 3:56.105, and we'll give you that rundown of the grid when we pan to the grid very shortly for what will be, of course, the rolling start procedure. But you can see Caruana in the centre of the pit lane there, a very phenomenal lap there. He takes pole in the Pro class with 3:56.105, 1 second clear of Billy Fletcher, and meanwhile in the amateur category, in the end, it's Alexander Batak, who we didn't see at all during the qualifying session as we're looking around, from Switchback Motorsport, who pulled off the pole in the amateur class and P9 overall. That is a phenomenal lap, and only 3 seconds off our pros pole lap. Now that is a brilliant effort from Batak, and that is a lap which is the best part. As we look back to our timing screens right now, that's the best part of 5/10 of a second faster than Mikkel Andreassen's time, which is a 3:59.7. So I think Mikkel and Batak, the two Danes, will be going to war in the amateur class in race number 1 in the sprint tonight. As we are now just counting down to that formation of the grid, I think it's just going to take 1 or 2 more minutes. We are just waiting for somebody to come through as we take a look at our race control right now. We're not seeing anything, no information coming in right now with regards to any instance and whatnot, so we are just waiting to get underway. We will have the switch over very shortly, I suspect within the next minute or so, to the grid that will be formed up, and it will be the short rolling start. Of course, we will not be doing a full parade lap of the circuit. We will just be running the final sector under safety car, and then we'll be released to go racing. Now, as we are waiting, of course, again, it's going to be quite a time before we get the flip over here. In terms of surprises or talking points, I'm definitely, I must admit, surprised at the performance of Batak and Andreasen to get themselves so high up the order, and also the fact that if you look at the split of the amateur drivers here, from P3 in the amateur class of stock, if you look on that time screen on the left-hand side, as we are now getting the flip over here to what will be the grid forming up very shortly, the amateurs are very closely packed together in terms of their lap times. And we are seeing quite a gulf within the pro times by comparison. But again, it may all have come down to how much slipstream drivers have been able to pick up over the course of their qualifying laps. So I think qualifying is going to be a little bit misleading in terms of what we can expect to see in the race. And it will be the slipstream battles in the race which are going to be ever so critical. But here we go then, ladies and gentlemen. That grid is now going to be formed up, and we will hop over to that grid and show you our drivers as they all get into formation. And also, let's just go through that grid order one more time for you. We can see their pole position taken by Matt Caruana, a 3:56.105 for Luxem 24 there, and he will be joined on that front row by Billy Fletcher. Then in the second row there, we've got Øystein Herford in P3, and alongside him will be Harry Melvin, the Ignium Motorsport driver. The first of the Ignium Motorsport drivers there, Kenny Hermans and Jeremy DeBova, lining up P5 and P6 on that third row. Paul King and Stephen Norman, P7 and P8. And then on our fifth row, we have our first amateur driver. That's Alexander Batak from Switchback Motorsport, starting off in P9, and alongside him will be Jean-Louis Deschamps, the McChallenge driver there. And then our sixth row is Ben Hicks and Mikkel Andreasen. Andreasen being the second of our amateur drivers. Two amateurs making their way into our top 12 from qualifying. A brilliant performance from both of them. And now we look ready to go racing once more. And indeed, a lot of our drivers I know have been itching to go racing since the break. And well, do give me your predictions, folks, who you're expected to do well and who you're rooting for, do let me know, as we are now just waiting for everybody to get set up, and that safety car, the Porsche, will take us away very shortly. Now, whilst we are waiting, I should say that Mark Baker, a little bit further down the order, very happy going into tonight. He's feeling great. He's had 2 weeks away due to holiday plus the break, and he's also managed to resolve an issue with his triple screen setup. And as a result, we can expect that Baker in the Ultra class is going to be doing a bit better today, and perhaps feeling a little bit more happy within himself at racing. And he was happy with his 402 in practice, so he thinks that it's going to go well for him. But we look back up to the front right now. Caruana and Fletcher take us away. Caruana in particular, as all our drivers now make their way, and we start the parade sequence from what is the run down towards the Porsche curves here. And as the safety car will peel in, it will be for Caruana to take us away as we go through the Ford chicanes and onto the start-finish straight. Now, it'll be a very long build-up here, and of course our drivers will be cognizant of the fact it's a long build-up, as we can see everybody just getting away. We've got 30 drivers here today, and as you look further back there, last but not least, it is Matt Evans who is starting all the way down in P30, and he has got Ben Henderson alongside him, and Henderson having a very difficult qualifying session as they make their way down and they come through the Porsche curves here. Indeed, I think for Evans it's a case of trying to stay clear of the carnage and just gain the positions as they go through laps. Remember, the sprint is only 15 minutes long, and with a lap time of just shy of 4 minutes, we expect that the sprint race is only going to be 4 to 5 laps, and as a result of that, it will be a very quick race. There will not be too many opportunities to overtake, and it will be about playing the slipstream game. It will be about knowing when to fight and when to tuck in and wait for the driver ahead to pull you along, as we see our drivers now come through the Chevrolet curves here, the Corvette curves, and make their way down towards the Ford chicanes. We expect the safety car to pull in very shortly, and then it'll be down to Matt Caruana to take us away for the opening race of round number 5 tonight. As the two Lamborghinis lining up there on that front row in formation, Caruana and Fletcher, both drivers, very, very fast drivers, and indeed I do wonder which one of them is going to emerge victorious here in the sprint. But as they come down, the safety car will be pulling away a little bit later on. It won't be pulling away at the pit entry. Instead, it's going to be pulling away just before we go green on that start-finish straight here. But you can see that Caruana right now, as the safety car pulls out the way, he takes us through, and it's green lights, and we are go, ladies and gentlemen, for the sprint race. And we can see immediately Caruana and Fletcher wasting no time in trying to charge away, as we see Harry Melvin by comparison a little bit further back, and he's already got some pressure from Austin Hereford as they make their way up into turn 1 and then into Dunlop chicane of turns 2 and 3 here. Will there be a potential move? It doesn't look like it. They all tuck in formation as we look a little bit further back, and we can see we have, oh goodness me, that is a Lamborghini tool. That's Jaco Boschhoff there into the wall, as we see Mikael Andreasen starting to battle a little bit by what looks to be Ben Hicks. As we look further down the order right now, and we can see we're looking at Nigel Stock as they make their way through, and I believe that is Alexander Batak who has had an incident, as we've got a lot of smoke coming up off of what is the sequence of corners, and we've got a car off there into the wall. I'm not sure who that is, but I think that's, well, I know Boschhoff's had an incident. We've got a car into the wall heading up towards Tetra Rouge as all our drivers make their way through. It has been a very dramatic start as we see everybody come through, and I think that was Austin Hereford who's had the major incident and gone quite a way down the order. We'll take a look back at that shortly as we see a Ferrari going very slow on the run down the Mulsanne straight here, but as everybody goes charging down towards what is the first of Mulsanne chicanes, we can see at the head of the pack we've got Caruana and Fletcher staying in formation right now. Meanwhile, further back we've got 3 wide as it currently stands, as we can see that looks to be what is Colin Martin at the head of the pack, but we've also got what is it's Nigel Stock trying to find his way through what is Alexander Batak, but Stock goes a little bit wide there, and as a result he has to tuck in behind what is Batak once again as they all go charging down the straight towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. Further back you can see that the battle is starting to build. There are Mark Sykes in the mix of a pack which is being led, I believe that pack is being led by Mark Baker there, as they all come down towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. And further back you've got Jack Wyborn who is in a side-by-side battle here with Henderson. Henderson of course being the newcomer here, the new pro driver on the scene. As we look a little bit further up front, and we can see Colin Martin making his way through the second of the chicanes, as we've got Dirt Bounce there, who was battling with George Bland. Of course, Bounce being a pro driver, Bland being an amateur driver, so they're not fighting within the same class. They're just fighting for pride and position right now, particularly the amateur, as we see them make their way now down towards what is the corner known as Mulsanne. Looking back up front, we can see there's no change in our top three right now, and I think our top three are all cognizant of the fact that they want to play the game of working together and breaking away. As we see then in the second pack, we've got Kenny Heremans, who is leading P4 down to what is P8 there. And then we've got Ben Hicks, who is at the rear of your camera shot there in the Lamborghini, who is the head of the third pack. And we see all of our drivers making their way down, although I think that has been an attempt to move there. In fact, everything is starting to snake together further back, as we see Mark Baker under a lot of pressure right now from Henderson. Baker and Henderson continuing to battle one another as they come down towards what is Indianapolis here. And it is all about the strategy as they make their way down towards Indianapolis. So we can see ahead of the pack, we've got Porter versus Henderson as they make their way into the final kink before Indianapolis. It's Porter on the inside, it's Henderson on the outside. Will Henderson go all the way round? Will Porter keep his nose in? Porter backs out of it. I think a sensible choice there from the Briton as he makes his way through Indianapolis, deciding not to go for it. As we look back up further, and we can see Sykes versus Verlamink here, and Sykes just letting Verlamink through on the outside of Arnage there. And I think the idea being that he's got a bigger fight to play against Andreasen. Andreasen tucking in behind, and I'm hearing that Fletcher has made a move for the lead. He is now in the lead. Let's take a look back at how that happened. So it was in the run down towards the Porsche curves here. Fletcher was on the inside, Caruana on the outside, and I think as they... Well, no, my apologies, that's not the Porsche curves, that's into Indianapolis, and Fletcher just simply slipstreaming his way through. Since, as we hear that Colin Martin has had a major incident, he's into the wall, and we've got another car into the wall there. That is Mark Sykes, who's decided to do a degree of rallycross. Oh, goodness me, and we've got cars left, right, and centre. Ben Henderson into the wall as well. Now, that is a disaster for Henderson. We look away for 5 seconds, and look what's happening, and we can see Matt Emmons side by side here with what is Arjan Backer as they make their way through the Chevrolet curves, and they have to back out of it, and in the end it's Emmons who loses out the position as we see our drivers starting to come across that timeline. So it's Fletcher who's leading ahead of Matt Caruana in P2, Harry Melvin in P3, then it's Kenny Heremans in P4, followed by DeBover in P5, then Paul King in P6, followed by Stephen Norman in P7, Jean-Louis Deschamps in P8, then it's Ben Hicks in P9, Alexander Batak, the first of our amateur drivers, in P10, he's first in the amateur class, then it's Nigel Stock in P2 for the amateurs, he's P11, and then we've got Dirt Bounce in P12, then we've got George Bland in P13, followed by Verlamink in P14, and Andreasen in P15, as I'm hearing that there is an ongoing battle right now. That's our top 15 summarised, but on lap 2 the battle continues between Fletcher and Caruana for P1 right now as they make their way through, and we are hearing that Hicks has had a major incident. What's happened to Ben Hicks? He is off there. Let's take a look back. That's a disaster. So making its way over the brow of the hill through turns 4 and 5 here, and coming up into the combination of 6 and 7 before Tech Rouge. The rear end slides and the car system. Oh, goodness me. And that was very, very fortunate for Batak not to be collected there. And Hicks did a very good job of stopping that car before it was too late as he makes his way back into the racing right now. And you can see he has dropped all the way down to P25. And the closest drivers behind him are Tom Delaney and Ben Henderson. Henderson, of course, in that pro category, chasing after Delaney right now, looking to get through. Delaney just wanting to keep it on track. As meanwhile, with these guys getting closer and closer, I can tell you that Wyborn is in a side-by-side battle right now with Matt Emmons as they come into the second of what is the Mulsanne chicanes, and as he makes his way through here, in fact that's the first one, my apologies, and as they come through, brilliant side-by-side action between the pair of them, and there's no change, although Emmons does start to lose out a little bit of momentum, and we will look on board from Matthew Addy behind. We're riding on board with the P19 driver right now in the Ferrari. This is Addy, and you can see he's waiting for the opportunity here to get involved versus Backer, Emmons and Wyborn, who are ahead of him. We're just going to stay on board with him for the time being as they make their way down. They're looking 3 wide here as they come down into the corner. Now who's going to be the one to make the move? It looks as though it is going to be Emmons who gets ahead in the end. He does the Moses, and then the door shuts there, and you can see how Wyborn just simply tried to turn in, and Arjan Backer was there, and as a result that is a move that's made by Emmons. But it is the case that right now Addy is closing up to the back of Wyborn, and Wyborn losing out massively in that sequence there. But a brilliant move by Backer to get himself into that fight, but it wasn't to work out perfectly
wait for him. As we can see here, Addy versus Wyborn is now erupting in the run down towards the Mulsanne corner here. You've got Addy on the inside, Wyborn on the outside. There's a little bit of contact there. Almost it was the case. In fact, it was Wyborn, my apologies, on the inside, Addy on the outside, and Addy almost taking the nose of Wyborn's car off, but they've made it through all the same. And meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that there's no change for the lead right now, but it is starting. Oh, and that's Harry Melvin into the wall. Melvin has just lost out hugely at what is Indianapolis. What has happened to the Ignium Motorsport driver? So this was them making their way down through what was Indianapolis at the time. And he was right on the back of the leaders here. He's gone for the move up the inside of Carolina, and the rears just completely snapped on him and said no. And that would have been a very, very well placed move if it had worked out for Melvin, but all that effort is now undermined, and we only have two of our original leaders up front right now. And then there's a 4.5 second gap to P3, man. You're looking at him. That is Kenny Heremans. But of course, looking from that and back to the action further down the field right now, we can see that Jeremy DeBova is closing up to Heremans at a significant rate, but Harry Melvin, meanwhile, has now got to scythe his way through the field once again. And the first driver is Dirk Bounce, who's ahead of him in P11. The two of them both in the same class, of course, as we get to the halfway point of the racing in the sprint. And this is only lap number 2, I should point out, as they make their way through what is the Porsche curves and head into the Chevrolet curves now. And you can see Melvin all over the back of the Porsche driver, Bounce ahead of him as they come through here. And then you have got the likes of Laming and Bland ahead. And I can tell you that Alexander Batak right now is leading the amateur class. He's at the head of your camera here. And then you've got Bland 2.7 seconds down on him. We've still got 30 drivers in the race as it currently stands, as we can see that Batak making his way onto lap number 3. He has got Bland chasing him. Can Bland close the gap down? That will be the big question. Meanwhile, further down the order, I can tell you that Mark Baker right now in a battle here with what is Gareth Mills, and it's the case he can't find his way through, and Mills in that P20 position as it currently stands. The BMW driver holding on as much as he possibly can, the South African, as they make the way across the timing line and go on to a lap number 3. And we can see that is Sykes there. I think he's having to do a lift of it. He's got something very wrong with the car because it is drifting sideways on that straight. I think there's steering wheel damage or there's steering axis damage to that Lamborghini, because we did see him have that massive off earlier on as he makes his way up into the Dunlop chicane for the third time of asking. But meanwhile, back up front, Caruana versus Fletcher. They have changed places, but this has been a change in the slipstream right now, and you can see that neither of them really want to fight too much. They are waiting for that final lap. That's when the fighting matters, and you can see further back, meanwhile, in P3, we've got Heremans versus DeBova here, and these guys are battling already, and I can understand why. I think in Heremans' mind, he feels that DeBova is his main competitor for P3. These guys are not battling for the race win. So what would Heremans be trying to do here? Well, what he's trying to do, he's trying to get DeBova to fall backwards into a battle with King and Norman behind, and this may seem counterintuitive because of the fact they've still got such a long way to go. His idea is if he can cause DeBova to have to park it on Apex at the Mulsanne chicanes, then as a result King and Norman can get involved in the fight. And that's why look at how Heremans is keeping the car on that racing line, and what he's saying to DeBova is effective. If you want to do it, you're going to have to come off that racing line. I'm going to make this horrible for you. But it looks like DeBova has made it. Oh, and DeBova's just not got it right. They're coming through the second Mulsanne chicane, and that's exactly what Heremans was looking for. He's looking for DeBova to have to push the car hard to get moves done, and he's worked that out perfectly, because now DeBova has lost the place, but now of course for Heremans he's got Paul King all over his back, and King's now going to be a different challenge altogether, because now it's not two Porsches battling, it's a Lamborghini versus a Porsche, and we know how strong that Lamborghini is on the straights here as it makes its way into the braking zone for what is Mulsanne corner. You can see it goes a little bit deep compared to Heremans, and Heremans is able to open that gap up, but in the slipstream down towards Indianapolis it is going to change as we see Dirk Bounce versus Andreasen here, and Andreasen of course not battling this too hard, he's not battling the driver. And we should point out, by the way, Andreasen running a very special livery to celebrate World Pride Day there on the SAS racing machine. If you're wondering why there's a slight change of livery, they decided to run that in commemoration of the event, so that's why the car has got slightly different racing colours as we see. Meanwhile, and that's of course to celebrate everybody being unique and how they can choose to be who they are, as we see that Hicks battling with what is Wyborn right now. Of course, Hicks, after that incident earlier on, having to scythe his way through the amateur drivers right now, and the other pros have fallen down the order. You can see he's in a drag race versus Wyborn as they make their way up towards Indianapolis here, and it's looking as though Hicks has got it done, but Wyborn would love an opportunity to come back at Hicks. I think he'd like to show his credentials to other pros to say, hey, don't forget about me, I do exist and I do love racing all the same, whether you're a pro or an amateur. And as they make their way down, we can see a little bit further back, we've got Henderson versus Sykes here as they make their way into Indianapolis here. No change that currently stands as they make their way through the corner, but I think we have had an off. That's Arjan Backer, in fact, who's had a little bit of an off there at what is Indianapolis as they go for our nudge. No changes as it currently stands. Meanwhile, Mikael Andreasen, I can tell you a bit further out, he's battling here with Dirkie Bouts. He's going to go for the move into the Porsche curves. Oh, goodness me, he's got a bit of door-to-door contact, and as a result of that, we can see that Bouts has gone for a spin, and that looked as though it was the case. Andreasen just got it slightly wrong as we ride on board with a nose here of what is Andreasen's car. And you're going to see there was contact between the two of them, although we don't quite see it fully on camera there. But I think he just got a little too high on the curving of what was the entry to the Porsche curves there. And that's very unfortunate. And I think there's going to be a word to the stewards about that one afterwards. Andreasen not meaning to, of course, but that just did not work out in the end as we see all our drivers come through. And I think Wyborn's just had a major incident as well. Oh, goodness me, we can see a Porsche there having to react at the last possible moment. And that was Delaney, who in taking evasive action has had a moment of his own as well as he tries to rejoin to the circuit. Only 2.5 minutes of racing to go now, ladies and gentlemen, and I can tell you, meanwhile, further up front, we've got Stephen Norman, who is in... Oh, and Stephen Norman, as soon as we looked here, it looks as though anybody we spectate right now has a major incident. And Norman getting it very wrong there in the run through the sequence up towards Tetrudge. He's only lost the one place to Deschamps there, but he would have wanted to have lost that, as he's now finding himself 1.8 seconds down on Deschamps rather than being ahead of him as he makes his way in the run down the Mulsanne Straight right now, the first part of the three-piece Mulsanne Straight, as we've got some drivers now popping into the pits, of course, with damaged cars and using their free pit, as we hear that Mark Baker has had a major incident as well. Where is Baker? Well, he's had a runoff. Is that going into what is turn number 4 there, that Baker's had an incident? Let's take a look back and find out what's happened. So coming out to turn 3 here, this is not a normal place to lose the car. And I think he was, goodness me, Baker trying to go for an inside line there versus what I think was at the time, that was the car of Addy, and it just did not work out. And in the end, it's the case that Baker coming well off the racing line, a line you wouldn't normally use through turn number 4, and he's found himself dropping down the field. But fortunately, the car is mostly intact. But meanwhile, up front, as we're now on that final lap, of course, we have got Caruana versus Fletcher here as they make their way down towards what is Mulsanne corner here. And now this is where the battle will start to erupt between the two Lamborghini drivers. If it's going to happen, it will happen here at Mulsanne corner in the run to Indianapolis, because that's where the driver can make a stake to the claim of the racing line and cause the issues. And as they make their way into the braking zone here, it's a case no move at the moment, but a cone does fall victim to the Caruana machine as they make their way through the Mulsanne corner and now head down towards Indianapolis. You can see how Caruana immediately placing the car defensive before weaving a little bit over once again onto that racing line. He'll be allowed 1 or 2 weaves, but excessive weaving will be called to the stewards here as they make their way down. You can see he's put the car right in the middle, but Fletcher's going to go around the outside into Indianapolis here. They're getting ready for the trail braking zone. Fletcher is ahead currently. Fletcher on the right, Caruana on the left. They go into the brakes here. Neither one of them wants to back out. They're still side by side now into the heavy braking zone, and Fletcher has swept round the outside to the inside, and he's got the move done. But will Caruana come back at him into Arnage here as we see Fletcher goes defensive, and as they make their way into the corner, no change so far. And as they now head down towards the Porsche curves here, it's one more long run before we have a whole sequence of corners. As I'm hearing off camera that both Ben Hicks and Gareth Mills have had incidents and have jumped to the pits. Their races are over at this time. We have had 5 retirements, 25 cars remaining, but looking at our battle for the lead, this is the closest action on circuit. We can see Caruana go for the move on the inside into the Porsche curves. He's not got the overlap, but Fletcher gives it the space, and Fletcher giving him the space means he's lost the momentum as they run through, and Caruana is back into the lead with only the best part of 7 more corners to go here, and Fletcher just ran a tiny bit wide going through the first of the Porsche curves, but Caruana now has got that pressure on him as they come through. Fletcher goes wide out of the Chevrolet curve there, and now as they make their way through, I think Fletcher has had to lift off because of that runoff there, and now Caruana's only got the 2 Ford chicanes to go. He's just got to hold on for 4 more corners. He does the first 2, now it's 2 more to go, and as he makes his way round, it will be Matt Caruana who takes the win in the Pro category in the sprint race of round number 5 ahead of Billy Fletcher. A brilliant drive by the pair of them, and then it will be Kenny Heremans who brings home P3 in the end for in the Porsche, and it will be Paul King behind him, Jeremy DeBova in P5, Jean-Louis Deschamps in P6, Stephen Norman in P7, Harry Melvin in P8 as he comes across, or as he had to lift off there. In fact, it's going to be Harry Melvin in P9, my apologies, it'll be Belay Mink in P8, and then we've got Alexander Batak who takes the win in the amateur class in the sprint race. race. A brilliant drive by Batak. Mikkel Andreasen comes home in the end in P11. That's second place in the amateur class and just ahead of George Bland, P3 in the amateur class, P12 overall. Matt Emmons, P13, and it's Øystein Herford in P14. A difficult race for the Norwegian, and then we can see it's Matthew Addy making his way across the line in P15 there, Jürgen Nocker in P16, Ben Henderson in P17, Arjan Bakker in P18, Mark Sykes in P19, and Mark Baker will round off our top 20 as he comes across the line. A difficult one for Baker, but one to bounce back from, I'm sure, as he makes his way down. Tom Porter in the end holds on to P21 ahead of Tom Delaney. The two of them have been battling throughout, and then we've got Jochen Seeger making his way down right now with Colin Martin just behind him. Of course, these drivers having a very difficult race as they flow through here. And whilst they're battling for position, they're not battling for points within their classes as they come across the line here. Seeger and Martin both flashing together here. The two BMWs in formation. It's great to see P23 and P24. And then it will be Nigel Stock who rounds off our finishing order with the retirements of Hicks, Bounce, Mills, Wyborn and Boshoff over the course of the 15-minute sprint. As we see Stock making his way through right now through what is the Porsche curves. And we'll come back to him as he crosses that finish line. But indeed, all of our drivers having a very challenging race. As we see, in fact, most of our drivers have jumped back to the pits right now. Addy is deciding to carry on round and just bring that car to a halt very shortly. But let's just see him as he goes across the line. Stock, as he makes his way through, then he'll valiantly finish it to the end. It's great to see from the Briton as he comes through the Ford curves, the first two, and then it will be the final two in the chicane sequence, and he'll come across the line to take the final finishing position of all of our finishes as he comes home in P25. That's P13 in the amateur class. What a brilliant sprint race, ladies and gentlemen, and don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just 2 to 5 minutes with the post-race interviews with our race winners in each of the classes for the sprint. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're going to kick off our quick interviews, and we will start off with Matt Caruana, who was our winner in the pro category for the sprint race. So just give us 2 seconds to bring him into the interview room. Hello, Matt. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Matt, congratulations on the win in the sprint race at Le Mans. How does it feel to have taken the win?
It's good. I had a good battle with Billy there, but it was quite tough. But yeah, it feels good.
So throughout the sprint race, we saw at the start that yourself, Billy, and also I think it was Ben Hicks, I believe, although I might be mistaken with the third driver, but the three of you tried to break away by looks of things by not fighting too much in the Mulsanne Straight slipstream zone. Just take us through what the sort of the approach was at the start of the race.
So yeah, so me and Billy, our plan was to try and break the slipstream to the guys behind. So we tried to pass each other on the straights and not have to lift off or anything. But Harry, I think it was, kept up with us, so we couldn't really drop him. So we just decided to stick behind each other and see what happens.
I see, because well, I've just seen Billy Fletcher on our YouTube channel telling me sacked for not following orders. So I presume that both Billy and yourself were on comms, sort of just managing things and making sure to play it in a sensible manner.
Yeah, we were just telling each other, oh, let's go past here and let's wait up and see what happens, and and we raced at the end.
Oh, definitely sensible. And given the fact that you showed us in qualifying with that phenomenal pole lap, that 3:56.1, with the pace that you've got, what are your expectations going into the feature race?
Hopefully I can get back up to the front. I mean, Harry's starting a little bit further up than me and Billy, but we're just going to work together and see how far up we can get.
And in terms of that working together, just one question we do have for you. When you're behind, say, for example, Fletcher, when you're going into those heavy braking zones such as Mulsanne Corner, how does that change the dynamic of braking in terms of having to manage the brakes?
Well, you sort of just lift off a little bit and brake a little bit earlier, because obviously you're going a little bit faster, so it's just safe to brake a little bit earlier.
Makes sense. Well, definitely it's working out for you so far. We wish you all the best of luck in the feature race and look forward to seeing how you get on.
Thanks.
All the best.
Bye.
Alrighty, well, those were some quick words from Matt Caruana, and now we jump over to Alexander Batak for his interview, our winner in the amateur class. Hello, Alexander. Can you hear me?
Yes, Paul.
So, firstly, Alex, if I may call you Alex.
It's fine.
Congratulations on the win in the sprint race of round number 5. How does it feel to have taken a win at Le Mans?
It feels amazing. It feels amazing to finally get that first win. And I'm just happy to be on the track. It's an amazing track.
Definitely. And we could see it from the start in qualifying, a very strong qualifying lap from yourself, but it was a difficult start in the race for yourself. You dropped a couple of positions and then had to rise back up. Just take us through what happened at the start of the race.
Just basically caught a slowdown in the first corner. Just missed my braking point a bit, and then I just had to get rid of that before the first straight on Mulsanne, and then and then I got passed by, I think, Nigel and Mikkel, but I think Mikkel also had a slowdown, so I quite quickly passed him again. So and then afterwards I just had a nice fight with Nigel, and then I think he caught a slowdown as well, and then I caught a bit of a break, and then I just let a few pro drivers past because they were clearly faster than me. So yeah.
Well, you've got a lot of begrudging respect from Iron Duck 92 in the Twitch chat, which is the name for Nico Andreasen, as we understand it, saying, nice job, Batak, he deserves it. It's been strong in the practice session. So definitely your fellow countrymen's noticing your pace. And turning that around, what can we expect from you in the feature race? What are the fact you'll be starting a long way down the order?
Yeah, hopefully some of the same, but it's going to be a long race, so hopefully I can make up a few places, and it would be very nice to at least finish in the top 5.
And the one final question we have to ask you, picking the BMW, it seems to work so well in your capable hands, and it looks so smooth when you drive. We saw it at Donington, we're seeing it here again today. What's drawing you to the BMW? Why the BMW?
I just had to pick it, take a chance, and I thought I've raced the Ferrari before, and I just bought the BMW just before the season started, and I thought, why not? Let's give it a go. And it's worked out perfectly. So yeah.
Well, it's working out for you so far. We wish you all the best of luck in the feature race. We'll let you get ready for it, but hopefully we'll see you again in this interview box soon. But until then, all the best in race 2.
Thanks a lot, man. See ya.
Yep. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that rounds up our interviews, our post-race interviews with our winners in the sprint race. That was Alexander Batak in the amateur class and Matt Caruana in the pro class. So now we are going to take a very brief break, and we should be back within the next 5 to 10 minutes to bring you the feature race. So stay with us. It'll be at least 5 minutes, but stay with us. We'll be back for the 1 hour feature race at Le Mans, and we can expect there's going to be plenty of racing action there. But until then, just bear with us a little bit. Alrighty folks, we are back for the feature race. Albeit right now we are just waiting for all of our drivers to get out on circuit, and as you can see the majority of them are currently just getting themselves into the race lobby. So we will be getting underway within the next 5 or so minutes. We'll be getting underway with the feature race. Now for those who are uninitiated, as we saw a quick word there from Apex Racing Academy, are of course one of our chief partners in bringing you this series. What is the feature race all about? Well, it's a reverse grid race. We see the grid based on the finishing results from the sprint, but we turn it upside down. So the winners start at the back, and the drivers who finish right at the back start now on pole position. So that means the winners, so Matt Caruana and Billy Fletcher, will be starting right at the back of the field, and you can expect that meanwhile the drivers who had very unfortunate races, such as Jakob Boschoff for example, will now be starting right towards the front. And this leads to the tables being turned. And one driver who did talk a lot about this in the build up to the racing was one Mikkel Andreasen in the amateur class, who was saying that whilst the sprint race will be tough because there's not many laps to overtake, there will probably be a lot of overtakes on the straight, and we saw that the focus will be on the feature race because it'll be a little bit, he expects it'll be a little bit less chaotic at the start, but we'll see overtakes down the straight, and slipstream is very important to save fuel and hopefully get an extra lap in the end to make a good overcut. So you can imagine for many drivers it will all be about looking to try and get an overcut on somebody, or trying to do that fuel saving in the slipstream games down the Mulsanne straight. As we see Sigurd here simply holding in this position right now as he makes his way all the way down. The German driver of course as he makes his way in towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. The BMW Motorrad driver, who didn't have the strongest of races in the sprint today, although we have seen it from Sigurd, he's normally very strong in the feature race, he really comes to life. And will the Jägermeister machine be able to do it again tonight? That will be the big question, as we've only got 3 minutes to go before we start to form the grid. My prediction would be that I think we are going to see our drivers who start up the front get reeled in quite rapidly. I do not expect we are going to see what happened in Long Beach, in the feature race at Long Beach, where we saw the drivers who had very difficult sprint races, some fast drivers who ended up retiring or finishing towards the back. They essentially made a quick breakaway and then just disappeared off the road. I think, if anything, we are going to see this field be very tight together on the opening 3 laps of the race. Keeping in mind, of course, that with each lap being 4 minutes, we are expecting approximately 15 to 16 laps of racing here at Le Mans over the course of the hour. But I do think the pack is going to stay together for a good number of laps, and we will only start to see that breakaway when drivers have filtered their way through the field, where we see some of the faster guys come through. But the challenge of course will be for the slower drivers. Do they want to fight and try and hold the fast guys back, or do they decide to tuck in and follow the slipstream train all the way through to success? That will be the big question. Now, checking in with the chat, we're seeing at the most latest from what is Tom Porter on the YouTube chat. Can't believe I threw that away. It was very unfortunate, Tom. You were looking for a good result in what was this sprint, but still, you've got another race to go yet, and we can see you making your way around right now in the NXTGEN Racing Porsche there, coming over the brow of the hill down towards turn 4. So do not give up. I know you won't give up, but it's one of those cases where you just got to try and bounce back. But I do know the feeling when you do throw a result away and you want to come back strong in the next one. And looking back, we can see Ollie Wayne there, Oliver Wayne in the Facebook chat, celebrating the good racing and wishing he could have raced tonight, but he'll be back next week, and I'm sure he'll be putting the pressure on in that very beastly Mercedes machine. As we also see a Night View there supporting Iron Duck, or supporting Mikko Andreasen as he's known in informal in the racing series here. Enjoying the racing is Night View, and the commentating. Much appreciate the feedback, Night View, and a great charge from Mikkel through the field indeed. And we also see a Nesta Major there saying that he'll hopefully join this series one day, and also that the MR cars are showing why they're difficult to drive. KT's placed the prediction in the sprint race for Fletcher to pick up the pro win and Nigel Stockwell Bland to pick up the amateur win. Those predictions not quite perfect, but still those drivers did all have strong performances there. And I'll be interested to hear your predictions, Katie, and the rest of you tuning in, your predictions for the feature race. My prediction will be, I'll be honest with you folks, I do not have a driver in mind who I think is going to win the pro or the amateur, although I will say that I do think that the pro win is likely to be between Caruana, Henderson or alternatively Fletcher. I think the three of them will try to work some magic together, as we see Porter getting it very wrong there and crumpling the front of the Porsche, going into what was there, coming out of, I should say, the second of the Moles and chicanes. 10 seconds to go before we get racing, and I believe we are just getting everybody in right now. The time of day has changed as well, folks. This is something that has been introduced as of round 5 onwards. We will be seeing a change of time of day between the sprint race and also the feature race to mix things up, and it means our drivers cannot rely on certain features that are weather dependent, such as shadows. Without further ado then, we are now going to get the grid formation underway. So as we do, we get the reset there and the grid will now be formed. And what we can see is, as we look down our order right now, all our drivers will be forming up, of course, on the run into the Porsche curves once again here. And here is your grid, ladies and gentlemen, for the feature race. So in the feature, lining up on pole will be a Jaco Boshoff, the Ignium Motorsport driver in the Pro category with that disastrous sprint race, that major incident on the open laps. Alongside him will be a Jack Wyborn. The two of them lining up side by side on that front row. Wyborn, of course, in the amateur class, be looking to use that starting position to his advantage. Our second row is occupied by Dirk Bout and Ben Hicks. Dirk Bout's there, the Belgian, ahead of the Briton of Hicks, both of them in that Pro class, and both Bouts and Hicks will be looking to get a strong start. You've then got Gareth Mills starting in P5. Alongside him will be Nigel Stock, two amateur drivers with a difficult race, but they'll be looking to come back here. Colin Martin starting off our fourth row in P7. It's Jochen Seeger in P8. Tom Delaney and Tom Porter will be lining up on our fifth row, the two amateur drivers together, and then we've got Mark Baker and Mark Sykes rounding off our grid there, our top 12 positions. But as our drivers now pull away, and we can see at the time of day there as it's changed, we now look towards the racing information here as we get underway with the build up to what is the feature race. All our drivers are making their way along right now. We believe that Harry Melvin is starting from the pit lane. He's opted to start from the pit lane here to stay out of trouble at the very start of the racing. But you can see everybody just getting themselves set to go here. A lot of cars further down. In fact, we do seem to have two flaming tail ends there. I believe that's George Bland's car that hasn't fully rendered in as of yet. We just take a look back there and you can see all the order coming through right now as all the cars are being loaded in. We look back to our lead cars right now. Jakob Boshoff there in that P1 position as he makes his way through the left-hander here of what is the Chevrolet, also the Porsche curves right now. They all come through in this formation. As we look from the blimp camera here, we can see all the drivers coming through. Wonderful French countryside, of course. It is a late time of day right now. The sun is coming down, and now we are getting ready to go racing very shortly as they all make their way into the Chevrolet curves, and then they'll be coming down towards the Ford chicanes. I say this one, of course, we have the mandatory pit stop. Our drivers must pit for fuel at some point. But as for pitting for tyres, that's up to them. But I think a change of tyres could be in order as well. But let's wait and see how it all plays out now as they make their way into that final sequence of the Ford chicanes. And of course, that'll be where the safety car peels off, and it will be for Boshoff to take us away. What will the South African do? Will he go early? Will he go late? Let's wait and see as he makes his way in. And it's green immediately, and Boshoff and Wyborn having contact before they've even got through the final corner to go onto the opening lap. And Boshoff getting the better run as oh goodness me, there's a Ferrari already spinning, and that, by looks of things, is Mark Baker. And there has been a major incident further back. That is a disaster for Baker as the car has spun there, and as a result, all those drivers losing out massively at the very start. As we look back up towards our race leaders right now, and you can see that right there, once our timing screen does get updated, that is Boshoff who's leading right now ahead of Wyborn and Bouts, but they all settle down immediately as Baker has jumped to the pits. That is a disastrous start for Baker. And then a bit further down, you've got Colin Martin here who's trying to find his way past Nigel Stock, trying to get the early bounce here as he is right now up against time before the faster drivers start coming through. As we can see that we've got further down, although to be fair, Martin not a slow driver himself, and we've got Mark Sykes in P12 right now. It's been a very dramatic start to the race as we see we've got Austin Hereford catching up. He's immediately lifted off here. I think Sykes has picked up a slowdown penalty and that's why he's lifting off so much. But as we look back further up the field, and we get a refresh on our time screens here, folks, because we are missing that circuit map, which we know that many of you like to see. We can see right now charging down towards the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. But you've got a freeway fight here forming between what is there. That is Gareth Mills. That's also Tom Delaney who's getting in there. Ben Henderson as well. They all calm it down in the end, but they're all swapping positions as Jack Wyborn falls onto the back of this. Mills has got the Lamborghini there of Henderson just behind him. Henderson over anticipating how much speed that Mills would take through the corner there. And then at the front of the camera we have got, what is, by the looks of things there, that is, I believe that's Boschhoff versus Bounce. No, that's not. It's Bounce versus Hicks, in fact, and Hicks battling with Bounce right now as they make their way down towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes here. Now, of course, this is a position between the two of them, as we do have Arjan Bakker glitched at the top of our timing board right now. That is not accurate to say Bakker is leading, as we can see that Bounce losing the position to Hicks there, but not fighting it too hard, and Colin Martin making his way past Stock as they charge now down towards what is the Mulsanne corner here. So our top group are breaking away quite a bit, and then you can see at the head of the next pack, well, that is Tom Delaney who's leading that next pack as they make their way down towards what is the Mulsanne corner here. Everybody keeping it nice and cool now as they make their way down. Well, I say that, and that's starting to erupt behind. You've got Gareth Mills being passed by Ben Henderson, but remember, Henderson in that pro category, Mills in the amateur category, and Henderson having difficulty in trying to find his way. Oh, and there's contact. I believe that's contact as we see Mills has spun, and it's Wyborn who gets collected with him, as everybody's got to come through the corner here, and you can see how they're parting the Caesar as Sykes taps the front of Mills's car, pointing in the right direction, and Bland gets caught out horrifically there, seeing Mills's car, and Mills, how it's gone from good to bad to disastrous in the space of only one lap here, as Bakker is definitely not leading, folks. I can tell you that. He is a lap downhill effectively right now. Well, not a lap down, much further down the lap we should say, but it is Boschhoff who's leading, and I can see that Mills has jumped to the pits after that disastrous moment there, as we can see Colin Martin making his way in. He's on the offensive versus Bounce, but Bounce is back up into P4 when all is said and done right now, and Martin having a difficult time getting past the Belgian as they make their way now down towards the Porsche curves here, and we're hearing that Jean-Louis Deschamps is making the move on Vlaeminck. He's going around the outside as Jean-Louis the challenge machine, and in fact it's the case as they come out of the corner right now. They go charging down towards the Porsche curves here, and it's no change at the line. In fact, that's Vlaeminck who's just ahead of these guys. Deschamps leading ahead of them, and you can see that behind you got Jürgen Knocker here. He's battling with Mikael Andreasen. Andreasen on the outside here going into the Porsche curves. He's going to get squeezed to the outside as they come into the corner, and he's going to go all the way round as Andreasen, and you can see that Melvin's now trying to come through as well. Andreasen being very brave with the moves, and it's also Mark Sykes who's come through there and gained the position, as we see Alexander Batak has also made his attack. He's made it clear, and he is already gaining places as Batak. I mean, he's already gained the best part. He's gone from the back of the amateur category up to P7 in the opening lap. So after one lap, ladies and gentlemen, it is Jakob Boschhoff who is in the lead, followed by Ben Hicks in P2. Then we've got Dirk Bounce in P3, followed by Colin Martin in P4. Then you've got Tom Delaney in P5, the first of our amateur drivers here. Then you've got Jochen Seeger in P6, followed by Ben Henderson in P7. And then you've got Øystein Herford in P8 right now, as we see Nigel Stock there rejoining this pack after having to lift due to a slowdown penalty. He's in P9, and there's Jeremy DeBover in P10 as they make their way through. That's our top 10 summarised right now, as we can see Henderson having a massive fall down the order here, and Henderson's had an off. Now what has happened to Henderson? Now that, I have not seen that. It was just a case that Seeger just simply pulled onto the racing line there, just a little bit of contact, sent Henderson's car for miles as they make their way around right now. And we can see that Arjan Bakker has jumped into the pit lane here. So it is the case. We're going to see if we can just refresh our timing screens to fix that, ladies and gentlemen, because that is not accurate in terms of Bakker. It's still got this Bakker as leading, but I can tell you it is Boschhoff who is our leader right now. So that's just a glitch. We'll have to deal with that one, but we'll continue to bring you the accurate racing as it comes. But you can see further back right now, Jeremy DeBover battling with Matt Caruana. Matt Caruana already up into P10. He's on a charge. Also up into P9 is Caruana as they come down towards what is the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. You can see just ahead of them there, that's Nigel Stock trying to find his way past Austin Hereford here, that Hereford just simply able to hold on to the position after gaining it in the slipstream as they now charge down. But remember, this is the opportunity now for Stock to be able to come back at the pro driver ahead of him here. As we see further back, you've got what is, I believe, that is Kenny Herriman's at the back of your picture in the Porsche with its lights off, and you can see it at Stock. He's looking for the move, and he's going to go onto the inside here. And meanwhile, further up, we can see Colin Martin battling with Dirt Bounce into the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, and he's been let through there. Bounce not fighting this one too hard, respecting the fact there's no, but he goes very wide as Colin Martin, and surely that's going to be a track limits penalty being applied to him, or at least a warning if not a penalty, as they make their way now down towards Mulsanne corner. And this is the challenge. It's the track limits really do catch our drives out. We can see Austin Hereford here coming back past as Bounce has just got back past Martin. We can see here that's Hereford who's coming back past what is Stock here. And as they make their way in the charge, look at the speed of that Lamborghini. It's the case that the BMW just has not got the legs to come through. And in fact, now Stock can go defensive into Mulsanne, but he goes very deep and Stock almost loses it. He just catches it in time. But look who's managing to come through now. Caruana's looking apart the seas here. He wants to try and make his way through the drivers as they come all the way down here. And you can see he's going to simply try and slip his way through. He's got Hereford on his outside, on his left-hand side. But Caruana will not be fazed by this as he goes to the inside for the second kink in the run down towards Indianapolis. Now who will cover? As you can see, Stock is also trying to make his way through here. It's 3 wide down into Indianapolis. Stock on the inside, Caruana on the outside, and Hereford in between. But Hereford has to back out of it. And as a result, he's on the inside versus Stock. But Stock is not letting the pros go. He does not want to let any of the pro drivers through, and I think it's because Stock wants to have some racing action here. As long as he keeps it clean, nobody's going to mind. But you can see Stock in the white lime green Lamborghini doing everything he can to battle right now. He's in P2 in what is the amateur class. He's got Jochen Siegert now trying to catch up to him, and Siegert all over the back of him. Of course, Siegert being in that P3 position in that amateur class as they make their way down towards the Porsche curves once again. And this is only after 7.5 minutes of racing, ladies and gentlemen. I can assure you it's going to erupt even more here as we see Siegert backing out. He's letting Billy Fletcher through here. He's let Fletcher through, and I think the idea behind this, as we see that, is Jeremy DeBova now trying to come through versus Siegert. I think what Siegert's trying to do, he's trying to let the pros come through and disrupt Stock. He's trying to get them to bring Stock back to him rather than worry about trying to overtake Stock and let them through at the same time. And this is smart play. We've seen this from a number of amateurs where they use the pros tactically to pull them closer to the guy they're racing after. And will we see that again here as we see Caruana all over the back of Delaney now. Of course, Tom Delaney being your race leader in the amateur class as things stand currently as he makes his way through the forward chicanes. And we can see Jakob Boschov has just set the fastest lap. Well, it was provisionally the fastest lap, but Colin Martin is the man on a mission of 4:01.1. And then we can see that it's Matt Caruana at 3:58.3 as we see Stock now is going to lose out the position here to what is Billy Fletcher who's coming through. And Caruana versus Delaney. Delaney is letting Caruana through, and Hereford's coming through as well here. And I think it's Delaney. He's playing the smart game here, Delaney. He knows that he needs to keep that gap to Stock, because if Stock gets within a second of him on the tow zone down the Mulsanne straight, it's going to be the case that Stock is going to come through like a knife through hot butter, and that's the last thing he wants. As we see a bit further back, we've got Ben Henderson now on the mission to get past Jean-Louis Deschamps as they come down through what is turns 4, 5, 6 and 7 and head up towards turn 8 at Tetra Rouge here. And you can see how Henderson is looking to get past his fellow class competitor here, but he goes a bit wide out of Tetra Rouge, and that's going to be a slowdown penalty applied if he picks up too many of those. But meanwhile, back up further, we can see it's Billy Fletcher versus what is Tom Delaney. Delaney doing a little bit of bobbing and weaving there. I think he's just trying to simply lose some speed versus Fletcher to say to Fletcher, look, just get past me, mate. I've got other racing to do. I don't need a race you. And Fletcher politely saying, yep, that's absolutely fine. If you want to let me through, just let me through. And the two of them sort it out very nicely indeed. As we see the Luxim 24 drive now makes his way through the Mulsanne chicane here, and they all settle it down once again. Now, as we look further down, we can see that Matt Emmons, meanwhile, in P18, in a little bit of a no man's land right now is Emmons, and I think he's just waiting for an opportunity. We have heard that Stephen Norman has had a major incident as we've got some drivers coming out of the pits, and we've got Mikael Andreasen who's just coming out of the pits now. Now, did Andreasen have an incident at some point where he jumped to the pits? I think Andreasen's going for an overcut of some sort, because we haven't seen too much of him, but we have seen that Arjen Bakker has just had an incident, but he is a lap and a long distance down as we see. I believe that's Arjen Bakker who's just had an incident. In fact, fact, he has... No, he's not had an incident. I'm not sure what's going on there, folks. We're getting glitched on our time screens, but we have just had it updated. So Boshoff is your leader now on that timing screen. We've got that all sorted for you. So as he makes his way down towards what is the Mulsanne corner here, you can see that our top three in a settled order, and we've got Ben Hicks tucked in behind. The two Ignium Motorsport drivers here deciding to run nose to tail and trying to break away from Colin Martin. Meanwhile, further back, you can see Dirt Bounce there in P4 in the green and brown Porsche, also the green with the orangey brown stripe Porsche, making its way down towards Indianapolis right now. And we can see some light flashing there behind. That's Austin Hereford there. I think he's trying to send a message to Fletcher to say, look, I'm not going to battle you, just give me the tow along the straight here. And you can see everybody settling down now into that nose to tail line of cars, and the idea being this is the big slipstream train, and they'll all be trying to do some fuel saving off of one another in the process here. But of course, for a driver such as Delaney, where he's got the pressure of Nigel Stock building on the back end, because they're battling for the amateur position right now. As we see here, there's a case that we've just had Jochen Seeger come up a little bit. Is the case, and in fact that is behind. Harry Melvin has just made up the place on Ben Henderson. We didn't quite catch that on camera. We'll have a look back at that in a minute. But right now all the pros are trying to work together, whereas it's the amateurs who now find themselves in amongst the pros who've got the difficulties. But we're riding on board with the gearbox here of Harry Melvin, and you can see Henderson, who is working with him right now. The two of them will not want to fight, but they've got Jean-Louis Deschamps, who is behind them, who will be, of course, you can see the Porsche driver there as they make their way into the Porsche curves, and it looks as though here Henderson's going to go on the inside, but there's contact between the two of them, and that's the last thing you want. As you can see there, my apologies, that's the Luxim driver there. It's gone horrifically wrong, and as a result, Henderson and what was Melvin, that is a disaster for that pair of them. But Melvin has got off the lesser of the two here, but that was an incident, and let's just take a look back at that. So as they're making their way into the first of the Porsche curves, you can see that Henderson's gone for the move on the inside, and Melvin has turned in. I don't think he's anticipated the amount of space he's needed to give. Perhaps he's expecting Henderson to back out of it, but that has now happened. That is said and done, and the stewards will look at that one. As meanwhile up front, we can see that Jakob Boshoff still holding on to lead right now by 2 tenths of a second on average versus Ben Hicks, but these two are literally oscillating back and forth on slipstream. As we see Caruana and Fletcher coming through, and in particular Fletcher has just got himself past what is Dirt Bounce there for P5. He's on a charge, as we're hearing that Mikkel Andreasen has had an incident, a major incident, has jumped to the pit. What happens to the guy who's down in P29? So here he is in the Ferrari only moments ago coming into Indianapolis, and I think something disastrous is going to happen. Is he gets a bit high on the curb, and the curb pulls him into the... That is a disaster for Andreasen. I think it's gone from good to disastrous to a nightmare. I hope he's doing okay though. I mean, fortunately he doesn't have to feel the full force of the impact in that car, but it's not a good race for the driver, who did very well in the sprint race, we should say. But right now, looking back to what's happening live on our screens, we can see that Austin Hereford here trying to find his way past Dirt Bounce as they make their way. The Norwegian looks to the inside here. He's got a long way to go, as we're hearing that Tom Porter has just had a major incident as well. Tom Porter, who was down in P23, but meanwhile on the live action we can see Hereford has got himself up into P6 versus Bounce right now. But I think these two are doing the whole chop and change of position rather than battling for anything concrete right now. They're just trying to slipstream past one another and gain time. As you can see that further back, that is Nigel Stock versus Delaney, and Delaney has lost the lead in the amateur class for the first time. But now it's the case that Stock has to worry about the Porsche driver having the slipstream here. But look at that Lamborghini go. That Huracan is just so strong on the straights here, and you can see whilst the Porsche driver is gaining, he may be doing a little bit of fuel saving here. I can assure you he is having to abuse the revs on that Porsche in order to keep it close. That Lamborghini is flying in the hands of Stock on these straights, and as they make their way on the final part of the Mulsanne straight here, you can see meanwhile up front we've got a three wide situation starting to build with Hereford, Bounce and Debova, and as they make their way down towards Mulsanne corner, you can see Bounce is looking in the middle. There's a little bit of a contact there on the rear panel of what was Hereford's car, but Bounce is trying to hold on, and you've got Debova who's trying to get into the mix as well. They make their way into the braking zone, and keep it clean, boys. It's very early in the race. You're only 15 minutes in. Meanwhile, Stock versus Delaney. Stock holds the position for now, but he goes very deep, and you can see how Stock is carrying so much momentum in that Lamborghini, and he loves it for Mulsanne corner, but he's got to be so careful because Delaney's regained what the small mistake of Stock. But as they make their way in the drag race now down towards Indianapolis, watch how the Lamborghini just seems to gain in its sixth gear by comparison with the Porsche. You can see it, the fact that Delaney's just not able to pull fully clear. They're still slightly alongside one another as they make their way into Indianapolis here, and Delaney has got a mammoth challenge challenge on his hands if he's going to beat Stock to the win in the amateur class here, because as they make their way into Indianapolis, he's going to hold the inside line, however, and this is really impressive stuff from Delaney. He is coming alive with this opportunity, and as he comes into Arnage now, he is back into the lead, but for how long before Stock has another crack at him? That will be the big question. Their next person to worry about is Jochen Seeger, who's currently in P12. He is the best part of 2.5 seconds down the road from them, and they've currently got Jean-Louis Deschamps between them and Seeger, who is the P3 man in the amateur class. Of course, the BMW Motorrad driver here doing everything he can to chase after them. As we look a bit further down the order right now, and we can see there's Mark Sykes in P16 battling with Matt Emmons right now. The two guys from Next Gen Racing, of course, wanting to battle one another. Of course, Emmons running under the MV Designs team rather than Next Gen Racing, whereas Sykes running under Next Gen Racing. They're side by side here into the Porsche curves, but Sykes backing out of it there, knowing that 2 does not go into 1 at that angle with that Lamborghini where it was positioned. But a good defensive attempt from Sykes, and he's just trying to keep it clean and consistent as per his specification going into the racing tonight. As we see here, Henderson stuck behind Nokia right now, trying to find a way through as the Luxem 24 driver after that disastrous incident between himself and Harry Melvin, as they make their way through the Corvette curves right now, and he's got to bide his time, has Henderson, as he makes his way into the Chevrolet curves. And you can see behind you've got Paul King and Steve Norman trying to come through as well, and you've got Addy in the mix there just a little bit further back, the red-white Ferrari in the amateur class, as they all come down towards the Ford chicanes now. And I think it's the case. Henderson deciding to pit early. He's going to go for the early pit stop here. He's in traffic and he wants that traffic gone. A sensible move, I think, from Henderson when everything is said and done. But meanwhile, Jakob Boshoff still leading from Ben Hicks right now. As we can see, our top 4 are nose to tail. And at the back of that is Matt Caruana, our winner from the sprint race, who knows that he's in with a great opportunity now to win the feature race as well, which he would love to do. So as they go charging around and as they come down towards the Mulsanne straight, once again, you can see all 4 of nose to tail, and it's Billy Fletcher just a little bit further back right now, as we see Hicks and Boshoff are going to trade places here, although Boshoff there almost going onto the grass. I think he under anticipated that Hicks was going to come through so rapidly and over anticipated how much space he needed to give, but he's got to be very careful to do that again, Boshoff. As we see further back, that's Jeremy DeBova battling with what is dirt bounce as they come down into the Mulsanne corner here. And then looking further back, we've got a 3 wide situation here. Stock, Delaney and Seeger all battling, and you've got Deschamps who's coming through as well. And we can see that it's the battle between our 3 amateur drivers, which is kicking off of the amateur race leader right now. And they haven't been this close together for a while, these 3, and they're reveling in it. And as we take a quick sip of water and actually take our mandated breath for a second, we can see that further back there we've got Matt Emmons, who's just simply in a little bit of a land of his own right now. And then we've got Jürgen Nockert, who's holding off Steve Norman and Paul King for the time being, and you've got Mark Sykes who's now fallen behind these guys. He's going to try and use them to pull him back up to Matt Emmons, we reckon. But it is the case right now. It is going very peacefully for Sykes, and he just needs to keep it together, and if he can do so, it's going to work out a treat. But meanwhile, further up the field, well, I can tell you that Boshoff has dropped a number of places here. In fact, he's all the way down to P4 now, and I'm not hearing about an off track, so I think it is the case that for Boshoff, he's just simply had to lift out, and he's doing some fuel saving behind these guys, knowing not to fight them too hard. As we can see, there's Billy Fletcher at the rear of your picture right now. He is getting closer as Fletcher. He's 1.8 seconds off of this pack of 4 who are racing for the lead in the pro category, and with only 19 minutes complete right now, you can see that Caruana is on a charge here. It all tucked in behind Hicks, and I think what Caruana's trying to do here, he's trying to get himself to the head of this pack, and he's going to try and make the breakaway. We know Caruana is perhaps the strongest driver here on 1 lap pace based on qualifying, and perhaps he feels at this point in the race that if he nails it, he'll simply be able to break away and use a bit more fuel. Of course, he'll need to take on some extra fuel in the pits, more than perhaps what he'd be anticipating. But I think for Caruana, he feels at this point in the race he can make the break, and if so, he's coming up to the perfect opportunity to do it. Because if he can get past going to the Porsche curves, then he can start to go through the zone where having the slipstream of another car, or particularly the dirty air of another car, is not ideal. The Porsche and Chevrolet curves, as he makes his way then down in towards the entry of Porsche curves. Does he go for the move versus Hicks in? No, he stays behind Hicks. But look how Caruana is placing his car. He is placing it as wide as possible to take the fastest possible racing line through there. I reckon the move is on within the next lap, and he will try that breakaway, because we can see that Colin Martin at this point in the race has dropped to 8 tenths of a second back almost on average, and as a result of that, I think Martin is starting to have a little bit of difficulty versus Caruana and Hicks right now. They seem to be just running a different league, but also keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, we talked about the Lamborghini so much. Martin is in the BMW M4, and you can see the difference through the handling sections. the BMW is quite strong, but as soon as we get onto an extended straight, it almost as if it's the case that it's a wolf amongst sheep here, in the fact that the BMW just does not seem to have the pace of the Lamborghinis on those straights. And you can see how it expands now as they go onto lap number 6, and it's the fact that Hicks right now under that huge pressure from Caruana as they make their way into what is turns 1, 2 and 3 once again into the Dunlop chicane they go. No attempt to move this time, but it is building up to one. We believe within this lap there's going to be a move at some point, but we will wait and see what happens. But meanwhile, down in P6 right now, a lonely P6 is Oystein Hereford. And well, before we come back to that, here is Billy Fletcher, who's on the back of Boshoff. So this is where it was building up to, and now it's starting to kick off as we ride on board here with Billy Fletcher in P5. You're looking at his perspective right now as they make their way into Tetra Rouge here. Now the question for Fletcher is, as he runs a little bit wide, as does Boshoff there, but I think that'll be a warning, and then there might be some track limits later on, although it might have just been within limits. What will Fletcher do? Will he fuel save, or will he try and scythe his way through and get up to Caruana? We heard from Caruana about how Fletcher and Caruana were working together in the sprint race. Will they try and do the same thing? And look, this is how he builds it up, going into the braking zone. And he's going to look for the move on the inside here, and as we jump to the exterior camera, we can see that Fletcher's going to look for it. Does he go for it? He backs out at the last moment there. I think it's the case that Boshoff decided to go a little bit late on the brakes, so Fletcher didn't want to lose the front of his car, as we see meanwhile that Delaney battling in P12 here versus what is both Seeger and Stock, and these three inseparable, and Delaney into the wall. What's happened to Delaney's car? Delaney was, and oh my goodness, and Seeger just got caught up in that as well, and that is Deirdre Vermeemink, who's just come charging through. I'm not sure what's happened there, folks. Let's just take a look back at that. So as they're coming through, it was the, oh goodness me, so Vermeemink was on the inside there of Seeger from the camera angle we saw, and as a result the contact was made there. But as for Delaney's car just seemed to just give up. I'm not sure what's happened to Delaney's car, but he seems to be struggling. Has he got a major technical issue? When I say give up, as in give up wanting to make corners. And that car is really in a bad state right now. I'm wondering if there's a puncture on that car or something, because it is not looking comfortable. And as a result, it is struggling to go through the corners right now. Unless there's a technical issue, perhaps the same with his steering wheel, but he is not in a good place, Delaney's car. And as a result, he is out to the hump by looks of things for the lead in the amateur cars, as it's now Harry Melvin who is up in this P10 position, and behind him is our leader of the amateurs. That is Nigel Stock in that Lamborghini, the number 888 machine, who is doing everything he needs to right now in order to try and break away. But meanwhile, in the battle for lead, I can tell you our top 5 in that pro class right now are all nose to tail going down into Indianapolis once again, and it's the case that there's been no change since we last looked at them. Although I say that, and Colin Martin's had a disaster under the brakes, but he's just about held it together for Indianapolis. It does seem as though Martin is struggling on the brakes in that BMW to Indianapolis. The car just does not seem to want to settle into that heavy brake, into that trail to heavy braking zone, and as a result he's had to back out there. But Matt Emmons versus Tom Delaney here. Delaney has definitely got a major issue on that car, and we're not sure what it is, but it's the case. Matt Emmons has now come through, and I believe that the next driver to come through will be Paul King, who is the best part of 12.5 seconds down. But you can see Delaney's car is just not in a happy place. But meanwhile, we look a bit further up and we can see that Fletcher has got past Jaco Boshoff for P4. How did it happen? Here you go. So in the drag race down towards the Porsche curves here, you can see that Fletcher on the inside, Boshoff on the outside, and Fletcher just simply goes through. Boshoff not trying to hang it around the outside to the inside run there. I think that's very smart from Boshoff, recognising the fact that this race will be won over the course of the remaining, what is almost 35 minutes rather than the imbattles. Colin Martin now under pressure from Fletcher, and Fletcher going for the move here on Colin Martin. We wouldn't normally expect that into the opener of the Ford chicanes, but he's made it work as Fletcher, and I think it is the case that he can see that Caruana's just ahead of him, and I think the two of them are getting ready to do some teamwork here versus the Ignium Motorsport driver, and it will be the case they'll look to try and break away as they make their way onto lap number 7. Now meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that Tom Delaney has continued to experience issues, so I think that car will be boxed very soon. But we look a little bit further down right now, and I can see that Matt Emmons, he is chasing after Jochen Seeger here. Seeger nursing a damaged car, of course, after the impact with what was at the time Vermeemink's car, of course. And as they make their way on to lap number 7 here, will Emmons look for a move into the Dunlop chicane? We will wait to see as they come into that braking zone, going into turn 1, a small lift into turn 1, and Emmons is going to look to the inside here. He goes through it on the brakes. It's of course going to be him on the outside now, but he cuts it across, and he's got got the inside line there. A very nice move from Emmons, and he is up into P13 overall. That's second place in the amateur class, and now he's going to be chasing down Stock, who is the best part of 4.5 seconds up the road. Well, sorry, my apologies, not 4.5 seconds up the road, the best part of 8.5 seconds up the road, I should say. But meanwhile, back up front, we can see that the Lamborghini squad, our top 3 of Lamborghinis here, all staying nose to tail for the time being, waiting for their opportunities to make moves here, as I believe Delaney has made it into the pits. Yep, Delaney is into the pits with the issue on the car. The mechanics will look to get that fixed as soon as possible. But meanwhile, one driver who we haven't talked about after a difficult start, Alexander Batak right now, our winner of course in the sprint race in the amateur class. He's now up into P4 in the amateurs right now, and he is charging after Paul King, who's the pro up the road, and who will try and take him to Jochen Seeger of course. But meanwhile, looking back up to our leaders once again, we can see no change from it as they go through the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, and I do think Caruana and Fletcher are sizing something up here versus Hicks, and it is the case that Colin Martin right now, I think from Colin Martin's perspective, you can see how that BMW just does not have the straight line grunt compared to those Lamborghinis. I think for Colin Martin, it's a case of trying to finish in the top 5 right now, because it will be 4 Lamborghinis, and then he'll be the best of the rest in a car that's not a Lamborghini, that doesn't have the golden ball on it, as they make their way down in towards Mulsanne corner, and a poor cone gets sent flying around once again. We could see as they make their way through the corner, all of them are nose to tail here, and Colin Martin just following suit. Meanwhile, Jean-Louis Deschamps, he's battling with Dirt Bounce right now for P8 Alton Circuit, and he's looking for the move here into Mulsanne corner, but Bounce closes the door as they make their way in through the corner here. No change at the moment, but meanwhile up front you can see Caron and Fletcher. It's getting to a bit of a boiling point here, as they're now only half a tenth off the back of Hicks's car. Surely there's going to be a move. Alternatively, one of them's going to have to lift out, and they lift out, but you can see how close Caron and Fletcher are getting to the back of Hicks, and this is getting very uncomfortable to watch, in honesty, folks, because when you're getting that close, the reaction times have to be precise. And meanwhile, Jean-Louis Deschamps has slipstreamed his way past Dirt Bounce there, but I think Bounce may have done a small lift off as well as they went through, as Mark Baker is in to the pits. And we hear that Arjen Bakker is as well. So it is the case that right now, well, in fact, Mark Baker making his way around the circuit. He's not in the pits, but we have already had the best part of 6 retirements from the race. So we've only got 24 drivers remaining, folks. The last run out on circuit right now is Mark Baker. I think Tom Delaney has had a major technical issue because he is out of the race, but Baker, last of our drivers right now. But meanwhile, looking back up front, we can see Ben Hicks going a bit deep there through the Porsche curves. He's going to be stuck on a very, very awful inside line there through the Corvette curves there, but he's managed to get the car stopped, and credit to him, and he's been able to park it on the race line. But you can see Caron and Fletcher, and look at Colin Martin. Martin is trying to come through versus Fletcher here. He's on the inside into the chicane, and as he comes through, he's got both of them. It's the case that Martin gets a double pass there. A brilliant move from Colin Martin to seize the opportunity. For how long he's going to keep both Lambos behind him, I'm not sure, folks, but that was some brave stuff. Let's take a look back at that. Running on board here, he goes past Fletcher on the inside here with them all being cramped up behind Hicks's car. He makes the double move and comes through. Now that is the move of the night so far. That is a phenomenal move by any stretch of the imagination. And now as we go back to our live timing cameras and continue to watch the racing right now, they come charging through what is the run down through 6 and 7, and you may be right about that, Ollie Wayne, about the fact that Nigel Stock was in a Mercedes previously, so he may have dropped a result to take a car change and drop some additional points. We'll have to wait and find out about that one. We'll get that confirmed, but meanwhile, here's the case that right now we can see that there is a BMW in amongst the herd of Lamborghinis here as they charge through, and meanwhile Vlaemic is into the pit, and as a result is dropping down the order. But these are the closest drivers out on circuit. It is the case of Colin Martin looking to try and slipstream his way past Hicks here, and the little BMW that could goes to the inside into the Mulsanne chicane here. They come into the braking zone, and he's got the move done. He's holding on for the time being, is Colin Martin. He's at the head of the pack here as they make their way out of the Mulsanne chicane. chicane at the halfway point of the race. There's still 30 minutes to go, and as they make their way down to the second Mulsanne chicane now, it is the case that Colin Martin is your race leader in the Pro class currently. Meanwhile, further down, I can tell you that Nigel Stock is still leading in the amateur class right now. He's got Matt Emmons chasing after him. As we look back up to our leaders, and you can see that coming down into the second Mulsanne chicane, it is Ben Hicks now who's leading ahead of Colin Martin. He slipstreamed his way past, but you can see the body language of Colin Martin's car as we jump on the gearbox here of Hicks. You can see how Martin wants to be at the head of his pack. He wants to control the pace of this. He doesn't want to let the Lamborghinis break away. He knows that he's got to push in that BMW in order to be able to have a chance to finish on that podium. Otherwise, it will be the case that as they make their way charging down towards what is Mulsanne corner, you can see how Colin Martin coming out the slipstream so early, he's barely gaining now, but as they come into that braking zone for Mulsanne, he's not able to, and that is the deficit the BMW has on the straight lines there, where he's got to maximise the time he spends, as now it will be the case that Caruana and Fletcher will try to scythe their way past Colin Martin here in the drag race down towards Indianapolis. You can see Colin Martin side by side with Caruana here as they come through, and as the camera now pans around to the second kink, it is the case that they come charging through the second kink here, and Colin Martin drops down to P3, but he's giving it all he's got right now. He's just literally dumping as much as he can into that throttle pedal, and as they come down to Indianapolis, he drops 2 positions here, and Fletcher now waits, but you can see behind them, look who's returning to this pack. It's one Jaco Boshoff here as they come down towards what is Arnage for the 8th time of asking here, and you can see now Boshoff in the prime seat here to make it a 5-way slipstream battle for the race leaders it currently stands, and look who's gaining as well. Hereford here, it's almost as if we're getting a big family reunion in the Pro class, as we've got the Norwegian now only the best part of 3.5 seconds down on our top 5, and he's closing as Nigel Stock, I believe, has had a major instant here, and that means Matt Emmons is now your leader in the amateur class, and with only 29 minutes to go. What happened to Stock? So he was comfortably leading as he's come down to Indianapolis. I suspect it's in the heavy braking zone. The car has given way. He's gone into the corner and the rear end has just come loose on him. But he's avoided putting it into the wall for the most part. A small tap to the wall to turn it. But it's going to be slightly damaged for the aerodynamics, but not too much right now. As I can tell you that Fletcher has got past Colin Martin. And now as they make their way through the Porsche curves, focusing on the here and now, we can see that Matt Emmons leading in that BMW versus the Lamborghini of Stock as they come through to complete the Porsche curves and go into the Corvette curves. It is the case that Emmons will now need to try and make the break here. Can he do it? That will be the big question as he makes his way out the Corvette curves and he heads down towards the Ford chicanes. And as they come through here with 28 minutes to go, the question will be for Emmons, can he somehow find a way to get rid of Stock as Stock goes into the pits here? Now this is potentially an undercut from Stock, also to repair the damaged car, as we see Jochen Seeger as well coming into the pits here. So we've got 2 drivers in the battle for what is the win in the amateur class coming into the pits, and then we've got 1 staying out, and it's our race leader in that category staying out. Meanwhile, further up the road here in the battle for the Pro class, I can tell you that right now Hicks is still holding on to lead. He's got Caruana and Fletcher behind him, and then you have got Colin Martin tucked in behind them, and it's the case that we've got Boshoff on the back of this pack, as we can see that Hicks and Caruana right now inseparable nose to tail. It's almost as if Caruana's sniffing the exhaust port there of Hicks, and he's had to back out, but you can see he's actually lifted off very slightly. He's doing fuel saving, and I do reckon it's the case that a good number of drivers in this pack are doing fuel saving off the back of Hicks right now, as meanwhile further back we can see Jean-Louis Deschamps battling here with what is, I believe that is the Lamborghini of Harry Melvin, and Melvin pulls back onto the line here as they come down towards the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. Now will Deschamps try and go late on the brakes? We know the brakes on that Porsche are strong. He decides not to go for it and instead just sits in behind here. I think it's a wise choice. Wait until the final stretch of the Mulsanne straight before you go for the move, as he runs a little bit wide of the white line, so that may be a slowdown, but we will wait and see as they make their way through and head down towards the second Mulsanne chicane. And as they continue to do so here, we can see dirt bounce behind as Boshoff gets past Colin Martin into what is the second chicane here, and I think it is the case that if Boshoff is able to clear Colin Martin and pull away, Martin will now start to be dropped here as we're seeing pit stops ongoing and our time screens are being updated as Caruana battling here with Hicks. Hicks has had a poor run out of the chicane and it means now it's Fletcher and Caruana. They're both side by side as they come down towards the Mulsanne corner here, and I think in this instance it's Fletcher who wants to take the lead position, but they'll have to sell it down into an order here, and of course Hicks and Boshoff will want to do the same. We've got the two Luxim 24. Oh goodness me, is that Hicks? Hicks has spun across the circuit. That is a disaster here, and I'm not sure what's happened. I think there's been some contact. Let's take a look back and find out about Hicks. Is into the gravel. He's just regained control of the car and got it back on circuit. Coming out of Mulsanne here, but Hicks has had a disaster. Taking a look back, let's find out. So in the rundown here to what was going into Mulsanne, he was in that P3 position, and it was a tiny bit of contact from Boshoff there. Boshoff, you could see Boshoff, I think, could tell something was going to happen because he tried to make that quick snap over to the left-hand side, but it was just too late, and I think just a little bit of a latency issue caused Boshoff's car to tap the back. As I see there, that is a Porsche Jean-Louis Deschamps that's trying to go for a move here versus what is Melvin, but he couldn't find the way through, so Hicks has fallen out of the hunt for the race lead right now, and as a result, it's now Deschamps who's chasing after Melvin, and Hicks is just ahead of them as they make their way into Arnage once again. But meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Fletcher and Caruana are nose to tail here, and they've made the break to Colin Martin already. They are now 1.6 seconds clear, and this is what they were waiting for. They wanted to get the pair of them up ahead of the rest of the pack and then look to make that breakaway, and that is Colin Martin who has got the pressure of holding off Jakob Boshoff behind him in that P4 position as they make their way through the Porsche curves here. Can the BMW driver hold on to a potential podium? We will have to wait and see as they make their way through the Corvette curves here and head up towards the Ford chicanes, and it is the case that Caruana and Fletcher changing places right now. By looks of things, yet Fletcher has just let Caruana through, but both of them are carrying on, and we can see Colin Martin closing up a little bit here, and I think it is the case that these drivers just looking to save as much as they can. As that is Colin Martin's gone wide out of the final corner. He's gone off into the gravel, so Martin has made his first major error under the intense pressure. He's dropped down to P5 as Austin Hereford has now got himself into P4, and I'm hearing that Matthew Addy and Ben Hicks have had an incident. Let's find out what's happened here. Well, we've got Addy here who's in the wall. Now what's happened to Matthew Addy? That's the big question, and Hicks has had an incident shortly after. So Addy, this is coming into Mulsanne corner, and I think he's just simply run wide, and the car went onto the gravel, and the rear left in particular said, I haven't got any grip, Matthew, I'm going to need you to go into the wall, as they make their way down once again towards Indianapolis now. And it is the case that Stephen Norman, meanwhile, just a little bit further up in the battle for P17. He's hunting Jürgen Nocker here, although Nocker, to be fair, in that amateur class versus Norman in the pro class here, this is a battle for position on the circuit, but not for points between the two of them, as we do see that Jean-Louis Deschamps is in the pit and coming out, and we've got Matt Emmons in the pit as well, and Alexander Batak, it should be pointed out right now, is, well, he has... Alexander Batak having, well, I'm just checking my screens right now, folks, to see if he has actually made a pit stop. I believe Batak actually has made a pit stop, and if that is the case, and he has taken on fuel, then Batak right now, you are looking at your race leader in the amateur class. Although we'll need confirmation of that, as Matt Emmons is making his way out of the pits right now, and as the MMV Esports driver comes out of the pit lane here and heads up towards turns 1, 2 and 3, we can see that Emmons in that P2 position. He's come out ahead of Stock and Seeger. This is what he needed to do. Stock and Seeger both went for the undercut, and it hasn't worked out for them, so Emmons has kept the position relative to them, but we are just trying to find out for you about Alexander Batak, what has happened. Well, I believe Batak did pit very early on in the race, but he had some issue with the car at that point, so we will wait and see. As we're hearing from Dan Kay in the YouTube chat to say, what a battle up front. Indeed, what a fantastic battle. And indeed, everybody enjoying the battling as it goes. But right now, Batak is the big question mark as we look back up to Ben Hicks here, who's going to look for the move versus Jean-Louis Deschamps. He's closing up, and Hicks, of course, having to now make a recovery drive after that incident between himself and Boshoff only a lap ago. And the first target, of course, is, sorry, that's Jeremy Debova, not Deschamps behind him, I should clarify. That is Jeremy Debova here, who's just trying to hold on to some good points as we take a quick sip of water and wait to see what happens here. As they drag race their way down towards the second of the Mulsanne chicanes here, you can see that Hicks going to the inside versus Dubova, and Dubova, well, he's going to try and keep as close as possible before bouncing off the side there. A little bit of a door contact, but I think for Dubova it's just the case that he's going to back out of it in the end. Whilst he would love to battle it here, I think Hicks has simply got the momentum to go through for the time being. As meanwhile, a bit further back, we can tell you that Ben Henderson, meanwhile, in that P19 position, is on the back of Knockout right now, and I think Jurgen is just going to simply lift off as Henderson comes charging through here, and it's going to be a case as they go into the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. Will Knockout try and battle it on the brakes? I don't think so. In fact, he's lifted off already. You can see it in the body language of the car, although Henderson being made to go to the inside line, to be fair, as we see that Mark Baker has jumped to the pits. So I think Baker's race is coming to a close. Alternatively, he's had to jump due to damage. We have heard he's had an incident out on circuit, but that is the case. Baker having a difficult day at the office. But meanwhile, back looking at the battle for P7, that is Ben Hicks at the front of your camera, and behind him, who we're now looking at, that green, white, black and yellow Porsche, the challenge machine here, is Jeremy Dubova as they make their way down towards Indianapolis here, and Dubova's going to look to the inside versus Hicks. He's coming back. He's going to be on the inside into the trail braking zone here, and it is the case that as they go through, Dubova regains the position, so the Porsche has not given up the fight, and we hear that Matt Emmons has had an incident. Matt Emmons has had a major incident. In fact, that car looks absolutely dishevelled. What has happened to our man who was in P2 in the amateur class? Was it's coming down then to what was the Mulsanne corner here, under braking, it all looks fine, and then coming out of the corner, it's just the rear end's given way and into the wall, and Emmons, who was on course we believe to potentially be our leader, depending on Alexander Vatak, has now dropped all the way down. As we see, it is the case that three of our top five have come into, well, in fact, all five of our top five have come into the pits right now, and that means that we've got Boshoff, Martin, Hereford, Fletcher, Caruana, all in a race to see who can have the fastest pit stop. And we've got Caruana already starting to make his way out, I believe. Yeah, he's making his way out, so he's going to have the fastest pit stop here, as also Fletcher is starting to make his way out. It's got a bit quiet as Batak is into the pits, and Batak, well, he's yet to do his pit stop here, so where's he going to come out in relation to Nigel Stock? We'll let you know. But look at Caruana and Fletcher. They've come out nose to tail in formation, and this is what they were looking for. And Colin Martin has come back out in P3. As a result of that, he's now got a good gap to Austin Hereford here, and now I don't think he's going to be chasing down the Lambos ahead of him, but it could be the case that Colin Martin could be on for a podium at this rate if he keeps it all nicely tucked together. But this is looking to be a very strong performance from Colin Martin as he makes his way down towards Tetra Rouge. Now, meanwhile, coming across that timeline to go on to lap number 11, it's Deardy Laming battling with what is Dirt Bounce here in the pro category. But we take a look back right now between Stock and Batak here, and we can see that Stock has retaken the lead in the amateur class, and Batak is just coming out the pits right now. So will Batak be able to close down a gap of approximately 8.3 seconds to Nigel Stock, or will Stock have got the win in the amateur class? That will be the big question, because it's between Batak, who you're looking at right now, and Nigel Stock for the win in the amateur class, unless there is a surprise incident that either involves both of them, or they both have major incidents right now. I cannot see Jochen Seeger closing up to these guys. He's the best part of 3 seconds down on Batak as a minimum, but we will wait and see as all of our drivers make their way through right now. But meanwhile, Jeremy Dubova versus Ben Hicks, he's got the move on the inside once again, has Bova, as they come through and head down towards the second Mulsanne chicane. Now down the second stretch, but again, it's this trading of places, and it's got to be done so tactically. As you can see behind, that's Harry Melvin and Jean-Louis Deschamps. We've got a Lambo versus a Porsche, and then another Lambo versus a Porsche here, and it is the case the Porsche drivers having to be very savvy and street smart as to where they go for these potential visitors. You see at the head of the camera, Dubova battling with what is there, Hicks, and he's trying to make Hicks go all the way round this time, and I think Dubova's trying to get the message through to Hicks, look, you're not just going to come through anymore, given the fact we've only got 17 minutes of racing to go here. And as they come through that second chicane, Dubova doing everything he can. I think what he's actually trying to do here, folks, Jeremy Dubova, I think he's trying to get Deschamps and Melvin to catch up to us. He wants them to get involved. But as we ride on the gearbox of the Porsche driver here, as they charge down towards the Mulsanne corner, you can see how it's the case. That Lamborghini is coming through very fast here as we look back to the cameras, and it is that Hicks is now being made to go all the way round, as we see behind them Harry Melvin getting ahead of Deschamps again. But I do think that Dubova is trying to cause as much of a nuisance as he possibly can right now to what is Hicks in order to get him into a battle with Melvin and Deschamps, and then that would enable enable Debova to pull away. It's a risky play from the Belgian, but if he can pull this off, it would be a phenomenal effort. We will wait and see, of course, as the Dutchman, as he makes his way down towards what is the run into Indianapolis here, and we're going to see again Hicks is going to try and go around the outside. Deschamps is going to have the inside versus Melvin, and as they make their way through, we can see that they're still side by side going for Indianapolis's apex here, and you can see it's just Hicks gets a little bit of snap oversteer as he gets on the power. Meanwhile, Melvin holds on to the position versus Jean-Louis Deschamps. We've got the two Lamborghinis sandwiched between two two Porsches here, getting my German manufacturers wrong, folks, but we can see that none of these guys want to give up the fight versus one another, so this is going to be a thrilling battle for P6 overall come the end of it, as we're hearing Colin Martin has had a very brief off the circuit right now, and me in that position of P5. In fact, what's happened to Colin Martin? He's dropped all the way down the order. So this happened earlier on with Colin Martin. This was when he was in P3 and the car's just locked up, and as a result he's gone all the way out to the barrier, and that's why Colin Martin has dropped all the way down, and that was Oystein Hereford, and also that there was Jakob Boshoff coming through. So Colin Martin, through one little mistake, has dropped all the way down to P5. But meanwhile our race leaders are Caruana and Fletcher with 15 minutes to go, doing everything they need to, and in fact Colin Martin has just come into the pit lane, I believe. I'm not sure what's going on here, folks. We're just going to take a look back at what's happened to Colin Martin here. Does he try coming into the pit lane? In fact, he's come into the pit lane, and as he's made his way through, he skips oh my goodness, and Martin getting it very wrong in the pit lane. Colin Martin's race is now in tatters, as we can see that Fletcher chased after Caruana, but this is not the big battle right now. The big battle, as Colin Martin has finally made it into the pits. There is a fault with the car. It's Hereford who's now up into P3, and he's got Jakob Boshoff chasing after him, but these guys are 10 seconds down on our race leaders as it currently stands. Meanwhile, I can tell you that Jeremy Debova in P5 is holding off the chasing pack for P5 right now as they make their way down towards Tetrarch. And again, it's going to be another round of slipstream battles as they make their way through Tetrarch and onto the Mulsanne straight here. And you can see all four of them all dicing for this position right now. And right at the back of it is Jean-Louis Deschamps, who would love an opportunity to go on the offensive. Meanwhile, to give you an update between Stock and Alexander Batak, I can tell you that Alexander Batak in the amateur class, he's P2 right now, has got the gap between himself and Stock down by 3 seconds over the last 2 laps. So that could come to a battle on the final lap based on our predictions right now. As we see here, we've got Melvin versus Hicks, and Melvin looks on the inside versus Hicks. The two Ignium Motorsport drivers here will not want to cause one another any grief whatsoever as they make their way out of the first of the Mulsanne chicanes and now charge down towards the second Mulsanne chicane here. And the thing you've got to think about for Melvin and Hicks, there will come a point where they will want to battle for position, but they need to do it at the last possible moment, because right now if they battle too much, and you can see, in fact, I think Hicks has let Melvin through, thinking that Melvin can pull him through past Debova here. You can see Debova is looking very, very vulnerable down into the breakers over the second chicane, and it's the case that Hicks tries to go all the way round, but Debova stays there. That set of brakes on the Porsche is absolutely phenomenal, and Debova is giving it everything to hold them off. I've never seen this, so much resilience from one driver in a single session. He's been doing this for the last 10 minutes and he's going to continue doing it until the very end. You can see how much that P5 will mean to him if he achieves it here as they make their way down into Mulsanne corner, and he's got to just try and hold on as Deschamps has gained because of all this. He's gained a position, and it's now Hicks who drops down the order as they make their way down towards Indianapolis now. Will we see another change? Meanwhile, I can tell you, in the battle for P3, it's Hereford versus Boshoff. Hereford at the front of this pair, Boshoff at the back of it, but Boshoff lifts out going into Indianapolis here. I think just waiting for an opportunity, but meanwhile, again, as they come through the second kink here, it's Melvin now who's on the charge into Indianapolis. Debova will try and go late on the brakes, I'm sure. They come into the corner, but Debova gets cut around the outside, but he looks the inside here into the corner, and the Porsche driver looking very strong through the handling moments, but you can see how he's lost hand. In fact, he's looking vulnerable now as Debova to Deschamps. As they go for on Arch here, Deschamps goes a little bit wide there, taking to the outside line, and this could give the opportunity to Hicks to try and come through. Vlamink is 9 seconds down on these guys, so it is the case. They can all battle as we see a bit of errant weaving there from what is Melvin. He'll be allowed to do that once or twice, but do it too much and the stewards will be looking at you as they make their way down towards the Porsche curves, and you can see all 4 of them squirming, and it's Debova on the inside versus Melvin, but he's not going to go for it there. It was just a feint of an attempt on the inside and trying to get into Melvin's head and make him make a mistake, but no such chance this time as they make their way through and now head down towards what is the Corvette curves. As they come through the right into left sequence here, you can see that right now Matt Caruana's got himself back past Fletcher to take the lead and set the fastest lap of the race, a 3:57.702, a phenomenal lap as they make their way all around once again. But right now, focusing on this battle for P5, there's no change that it currently stands. Meanwhile, I do appreciate, folks, some of you may be saying, well, there's other drivers out on circuit, not just these 4. I do completely agree. We see here we've got George Bland chasing after Kenny Heremans right now. Down in P20 is Bland, but this is the equivalent of P5 in the amateur class right now. This race going a bit better for the McLaren driver than perhaps it did at first, but you can see chasing after what is Heremans here. But the next driver he'll be hunting down is Jürgen Nocker, who's a long way up the road, the best part of 7 seconds up the road, and he's got to close it down as Nigel Stock. Hold on a second, what's happened to Stock here? There's been an instant. Stock's into the wall, and that means your race leader now in the amateur class is Alexander Matak once again. Alexander has come through the field and he's into the lead with only 10.5 minutes to go. What happened to Stock? Let's find out. So this was Stock only moments ago on what was lap number 12, making his way through the Ford chicanes. He cleared the first one fine, but as he's gone into the second, the rear end's completely gone on that car. You could see the attitude of the car as he swung it over to the right to try and widen the entry into what was the second Ford chicane. He just simply pulled too much momentum into the corner, and that's what caused the car to simply come round him so aggressively there. Well done to catch out. He wasn't into the wall there. It looked as though it was for the initial camera, but meanwhile, we look back up to the battle for what is P5, and we can see that Jeremy Debova right now is back into the head of this pack as the Porsche drivers are now leading it. George Bland has had an incident, but we'll come back to that in a second. But now as they make their way down towards the second Mulsanne chicane, once again we can see that Jean-Louis Deschamps trying to go round here. We can see the 2 Lamborghini drivers, well, they're trying to find a way to get through here. I think that's frustration in Melvin's case. He's trying to find a way to tuck in. He's trying to identify which driver to sign high behind as he's going to make it 3 wide. And Melvin's going to try and come down the inside of the pair of them here as they come into the chicane, and Debova backs out of it, but you can see Jean-Louis Deschamps just about holds on, and Melvin, I think, has had enough. I think he's trying to say to him, look, I'm coming through now whether you like it or not, and Melvin there with a very, very close call to get himself back up into P6 right now. Oh my goodness me, and now he's going to look for the move versus Deschamps, and you can see it's Hicks who's trying to come through with him as they all go into their relative formations here. Debova tries to go the long way round the outside into Mulsanne corner. There's contact between Deschamps and Melvin as they come into the braking zone, and Melvin holds on, but Debova goes all the way round the outside to get back into P5. But for how long, as they've now got the next drag race down towards Indianapolis? My good lord, ladies and gentlemen, I've never seen it this close as they make their way down towards Indianapolis right now, and there's 9 minutes to go here. At least 2 more laps of racing after this one, and any one of these guys could finish in P5 right now. I know it's not a battle for the win, but this is too close to call as they come charging down towards where it's Indianapolis. So we can see that Melvin in the lead now as he slips through his way past Debova, but it keeps changing places and the attacks are getting ever more edgy and risky right now, and you'd love to see it as they make their way down. But now we can see Deschamps has dropped to the back of this pack, but he won't be at the back of it for long. He will want to come back at it very shortly, as meanwhile in the battle for P3, I can tell you that Oystein Hereford has pulled a little bit away from Bosch. The gap has opened up to 6.5 tenths of a second, as the Norwegian is starting to find a little bit of favour. As meanwhile Debova, well, he's got himself slightly ahead here of Melvin as they make their way into the Porsche curves, and they're going to come through here and they all sweep through for the time being. But meanwhile, a bit further down, I can tell you that Jürgen Nocker is chasing after Colin Martin right now. Martin having to make that, of course, that additional pit stop where the car seemed to have just failed on him, and Nocker in P4 right now in the amateur classes. Caruana sets a 56.781. That is a phenomenal fastest lap, and he's now 2 2.7 seconds clear of Fletcher. I think Caruana is running away with this to the very end, but we can see that Knocker on the attack here versus what is Colin Martin trying to find a way through, but will he be able to do so? Only time will tell, as then we look a little bit further up and we can see that Nigel Stock, meanwhile, is chasing after Paul King. He is looking to try and catch back up to Alexander Batak. Batak being the best part of 5.5 seconds up the road here from Stock. Stock who wants that opportunity to come back and pick up the potential win in the amateur class. But I think with the time remaining, it's going to require a significant mistake from Batak in order for the position to be regained, as Matt Evans has just left the pit lane, and I believe that is Evans down in P23 after they've done all the repair work to the car, and meanwhile Stephen Norman in P15 just making his way through the Porsche curves here, but it has spaced out quite a bit, ladies and gentlemen. But meanwhile, looking back to our battle for what is P5 out on circuit. Indeed, this is for the pro battle as well. We can see that Dabova right now at the head of this pack. He has not made it easy for any of them to find a way through, and he's still at the head of this with 2 laps, including this one, to go. Will Dabova be able to hold on for that P5, or will it be the case that he's going to falter at the final hurdle? We will wait and see, but I can assure you that Melvin, Hicks and Deschamps have all got their own aspirations, and it all kicks off again as they start to throw little feints towards one another, particularly Melvin, although I think the stewards are definitely going to be looking at this one afterwards, because that could be considered quite dangerous in all honesty, folks. But Melvin doing the side-to-side weaves to try and get into Dabova's head here as they make their way through the chicane and head down towards the second chicane once more. And you can see how Melvin, he's almost as if he's gearing himself up here, as if he's building himself up to a big attack here, as if to signal, I'm coming. But which side is it? Is it left, right or centre, as they make their way down towards the second chicane once more? And you can see behind Jean-Louis Deschamps, meanwhile, under a lot of pressure here, as Didier Vlaeminck is actually catching up to this at a very fast rate now. He's only 3.5 seconds back at the back end of the picture there, but you can see how Deschamps looked to a potential move there. Wasn't able to find it, but Hicks goes wide out the second chicane, and this could be the opportunity Deschamps was waiting for here, as now he's going to gain the move, and he will have momentum in the run down towards Mulsanne. As they make their way down towards that legendary corner, you can see that right now Deschamps starting to break away a little bit from Hicks after that one small mistake. Meanwhile, in our battle for P3, I can tell you that it's Hereford who is being caught up by Boshoff once again, but this is where Boshoff normally catches up on the long straights before we get down to Indianapolis. But will we see a move from Boshoff here? Hereford's going to have to go defensive this time, or is he, as they come into the trail braking zone? Is there going to be a move here? They make their way in, and there's no attempt at a move this time. I think the Lamborghini driver's saving it all for the final lap. Will it be the case, or will it be the case that Hereford's able to break away? As meanwhile, Dabova once again under that pressure from Melvin. Melvin's going to try and go around the outside into Indianapolis here. As they come down, this is the penultimate lap for these guys. They go into the trail braking zone, and Melvin sweeps around here, but he gets it very, very late on the brakes. You can see Melvin just stopping the car in time, park it on the apex of Indianapolis, and this means Deschamps and Hicks both catch up now, but Dabova comes back at him. He tries to go around the outside of Arnage. He's got the grip to do it, but he just goes a little bit errant there as they come out the corner. Just a small amount of oversteer prevents him from getting the power down as much as he'd like, as we can see that Melvin doing a little bit of weave, and Deschamps is trying to come through, but Dabova cuts off the nose of Deschamps as Deschamps was trying to get himself placed there. You can see Deschamps wants an attempt at this, but there's going to be no way through unless Dabova says so, as Dabova goes to the inside in towards what is the Porsche curves once again, and as they come through here, it is the case that they all swap positions once more, and it's still Dabova at the head of this pack, as we hear that Matt Emmons is into the pits. He's had another incident, but meanwhile up front, Caron and Fletcher. Well, Fletcher has just set a 3:56.283. That's almost as fast as the pole lap we saw in qualifying, and they are now on to their final lap as they make their way round. And to give you an idea, here are our race leaders, ladies and gentlemen. Here is Caruana, and just coming over the brow of Dunlop Hill, it is Fletcher in that P2 position right now. We then got Westin Hereford, who has made a small breakaway from Boshoff, but we're on to that final lap now. So will we see Boshoff go full attack and try and find a way through? Well, if he does, he's going to have to close up, because he's lost about 0.3 of a second in the opening sector already. And we can see behind, meanwhile, that Jeremy Dabova, he's got Harry Melvin on his inside here into turn 1, but Dabova will be on the inside into 2. Melvin going very early this time on the final lap. I think Melvin's trying to look for places. I think he's been analysing Dabova and realising, okay, if you're not going to make it easy for me in the slipstream run, I'm going to have to be inventive here. And we can see that Deschamps suffering from the same situation, with Hicks trying to find his way through here. Oh my good lord, it is going to go all the way down, and there's Verlamink only 1.6 seconds back. You can see him here in the rear of the picture. He's down the centre of your picture. He will be trying to close up to these guys, but as we ride on board here with what is Ben Hicks's car, he's our P8 man as it currently stands. They make their way down towards the first of the moles and chicanes, and this is where it all starts to open up, and we can see already Melvin going for a potential move here. As we see Melvin and Dabova, they've changed a little bit. It's the drag race, of course. Dabova losing outside. There's a little bit of door rubbing here as they come charging down. We've heard that Jürgen Nockert's had an incident out on circuit, but focusing on the here and now, they're going to be 4 wide into the braking zone for the first moles and chicane for the final time, and it is Dabova who just holds on for the time being. As you can see, Melvin's had to park it on Apex, and as a result that has blocked the shunt, but it's meant Dabova's got the run as they now make their way down towards the second chicane. Oh my good lord, I can't predict who's going to do it right now. Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. This has got to be the most deadliest fight for P5 that we have seen in a long time, but we love it as they make their way down. Dabova takes it to the inside, and it looks as though Deschamps is going to try and come all the way around the outside. Melvin tucks it behind Dabova here, and we can see that Hicks just watches on as they make their way in, and it's Hicks versus Deschamps into the corner, and how those two did not make contact, I do not know, as they make their way through, and you can see that Melvin just squeezes ahead of Deschamps once again, and now Verlamink is definitely within the slipstream of all 4 cars as they make their way down here, and it is the case as they charge down towards Mulsanne corner once again that it's going to be Dabova who now starts to break away as Deschamps starts to weave in order to look for a move here versus Melvin. I think Dabova, if he could just nail Mulsanne corner, he's going to be safe because these guys are battling so much now, but you can see that Melvin's had the better run out of the corner, and now Dabova is going to be extremely vulnerable here. He's going to have to go so defensive, like his life depends on it. Our race leaders, meanwhile, have just come out of our nudge. We will switch them as they cross the finish line. We'll not disrespect them. As we see right now, it's Dabova on the inside, Melvin on the outside. They're going to the second king. Deschamps tries to go all the way round. He takes to the runoff area. He can't find a way through as Melvin blocks him in. They make their way down, and it's going to be Melvin who comes all the way round, and it's now Dabova who drops back, but he looks the inside. As we can see here, it's Jean-Louis Deschamps, and he's just been passed by Ben Hicks as Ben Hicks has gained a position. But as they make their way through the final sector of corners right now, it has been a brilliantly driven race by these guys, but one man in particular who's just going to be 2 seconds ahead of his teammate from Luxem 24. It is Matt Caruana, who, as he's only got the 2 forward chicanes to go, he makes his way through the first one as the checker flag gets prepped for waving. He makes his way through the second one. It's been a faultless drive, and Matt Caruana will make it 2 wins out of 2, winning the feature race at Le Mans, and Billy Fletcher comes home in a valiant P2. Oystein Hereford, in the end, he's been able to hold on. He's held on for all this time to P3. He's had Boshoff chasing after him, but as he makes his way out of the final corner, it will be Oystein Hereford who finishes in P3 ahead of Jaco Boshoff in P4. And in the battle for P5, it looks as though Harry Melvin, after he made that pass down to Indianapolis, he's been able to hold on to it as Davova's not close enough. So in what has been the biggest battle for P5, it's Melvin who comes through the final 2 corners. And it's Harry Melvin who takes 5th place and rounds off our top 5. Ahead of Jeremy Dabova in P6, then Jean-Louis Deschamps in P7, Ben Hicks in P8, Deirdre Verlamink just a little bit short of finishing in that order. He finishes in P9 in the end, and then it will be Dirk Boutz who comes through the final corner to take P10 in the end. A brilliant drive there, and a win, a back-to-back pair of wins for Alexander Batak in the amateur class. A brilliant drive by Batak. He will be pleased with that one. Paul King in P12, and then Nigel Stock, if only he'd not made that one mistake, it would have been a win. But P2 for Nigel Stock in the amateur class, P13 overall in this race. And then Jochen Seeger makes his way right now down towards the finish line, flashing his lights here, and I'm assuming he's just taking it nice and easy here. He hasn't run out of fuel, because if so, that would be a disaster just before the finish line. He'd probably do a Mansell and get out and push it. As he makes his way across the line, it will be a P3 in the amateur class for Seeger in the feature race. A brilliant drive by the BMW Motorrad driver, and it's Ben Henderson who takes the top 15th, final position in the top 15. That's 15th. And then we have got Stephen Norman, who just gets it a bit wrong at the final corner. So Colin Martin in the end is going to take P16 ahead of Stephen Norman in P17. Kenny Herriman's in P18, and then it's going to be Jürgen Nockert here who comes comes around to take 4th place in the amateur category as he makes his way up to the forward chicanes here. It's going to be a strong drive from Knocker, as we've seen time and time again, but this one I think is going to mean a lot to him because it's Le Mans. As he makes his way through the final chicane, he comes through in the number 173 car to pick up 4th place in the amateur class, P19 overall, and then who would have thought it? Mark Sykes bringing home a top 5 in his class in the feature race today. The Next Gen Racing driver comes home P20 overall, P5 in the amateur class, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is our top 20 as Matthew Addy holds off George Bland in the end to come home P21, that's P6 in amateur, and it is George Bland who comes home P22, that's P7 in amateur, and those are our final finishers. We had the retirements of Matt Emmons, Mark Baker, Tom Delaney, Arjan Bakker, Gareth Mills, Tom Porter, Mikkel Andreasen, and Jack Weidborn. But what a brilliant drive up and down the field, and I think for most of our drivers they will be exhausted after what has been a phenomenally long race as they all just gradually saunter around right now and start retreating back to the pits. But what fantastic racing up and down the field, and my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to say, when it comes around to picking a driver of the day, it's going to be very difficult, but that's for me to do off camera. But right now, we'll be right back within the next 2 to 3 minutes for post-race interviews with our race winners. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. Well, having recovered our voice, we're going to be starting off with our amateur class winner this time around, and that will be with Alexander Patak. We'll just get him in here. Hello once again, Alex.
Hello.
2 wins out of 2 tonight at Le Mans. How does it feel to have come from the back of the field to win in the feature race?
Yeah, it's pretty surreal. I didn't expect it, to be honest, when I hit the wall on the first lap. So yeah, it's amazing. It's yeah, totally out of the body feeling.
With regards to the incident, so we saw that you'd had an incident, you'd had to make an additional pit stop. Did you change your approach to the race because of the incident, or was it still the same strategy being applied?
Yeah, when I got out of the pits, it was pretty much just pedal to the metal, quali laps all the way to see if I could get anything back. And when I got in around 20 seconds to, I think it was Sigurd or so, I kind of had a little feeling that I might be able to fight for the podium, and then yeah,
I see.
Everything went well.
It definitely worked out, and there was a large rate of attrition in the race. I get the feeling you might likely have been looking up at your timing screen as you're going around, seeing that drivers were falling out of the order.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was just head down and just very focused.
So with that focused and making your way through the field, particularly with the instant earlier on, was there a point where you're sort of thinking to yourself, okay, I can only drive at 80% after I've had an incident, or was it still the case that you just had to put the incident behind you and drive as if it had never happened?
Yeah, totally. I just had to forget about the incident, and because it's a racing incident, you know. I don't think I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know. But from the looks of it, from my car, it just looked like a racing incident. So yeah, that's just, you live and learn, I guess, and then yeah, move on. And
definitely understandable. And I guess really with pardon me, with that pair of races out the way, and now looking forward to round number 6 in a week's time, 2 hours of Silverstone, how do you feel about going to the British circuit?
Right now I'm feeling very good, but yeah, let's see when we hit Wednesday, and because I know there's a lot of fast guys. I think I hit the day today, and yeah, hopefully I can continue that form, but I'm just looking forward to a good race.
Oh, we look forward to seeing you out on the British circuit once again. But right in the here and now, congratulations on 2 wins out of 2 tonight in the amateur class. Enjoy the double win, and we look forward to seeing you out there once again next week.
Thanks, mate. Thanks.
All the best.
You too, man.
Definitely a very happy man there, Alexander Patak, and very pleased with it. And as he's saying there, it felt surreal to pick up the win, especially after the incident at the start, which he calls a racing incident. Of course, the stewards will look into what happened there specifically, but to come back after making an additional pit stop, that is a sign of someone who should never give up, and indeed believes in never giving up, and it's worked out for him. There was a high rate of attrition, which many will put on side in his favour, but of course, it's about bringing that car home, and he was the one to do it at the end of the day. And speaking out bringing the car home, we now come over to our winner in the Pro class, who we're just going to bring in once again. And that'll be Matt Caruana. Hello again, Matt.
Hello.
2 out of 2, Matt. What can I say other than a brilliant drive once again? How does it feel to have picked up both wins?
It's good. There was a very scary moments in that race, but yeah, it was good. And me and Billy had to work together to get up there. But yeah, it was good.
So with regards to coming through the field, you came through the field very quickly. I think within the opening 2 laps, you'd gone from P30 to approximately P6. Just take us through what was happening. Was it a case that everybody around you was faltering, or did you have a sort of battering ram on the front of the car and said, I'm coming through whether you like it or not?
Well, in the first couple of laps, I was just trying to get up as far as possible and see how far up I can get, and then fuel save a little bit and try and get up to the leaders. So yeah, and we did it.
And then when you got onto the leaders, there was this curious moment where we saw you were hooked in behind, I think it was Ben Hicks at the time, and you got very close to me, you never passed it, and then as soon as Fletcher came through and got behind you in P3, it was almost as if you and Fletcher both said, right, now we'll both have him and get past and break away. Was that the plan?
Yeah. Well, I think once we both got behind them, we had to think about what we were going to do, and then we decided we were just going to fuel save and see if we can get in front of him in the pit stops and to avoid an incident that might have happened battling. But yeah.
And then after breaking away, was it just a simple case of smooth sailing on the strategy? Because we saw you both emerge from the pits together and had a nice gap to the rest of the field.
Yeah, we just we're just relaxing after that, driving, not battling in case something happened, and just not throwing away the win and P2. So yeah.
That was a brilliant drive between the pair of you. And I have to ask, looking forward to Silverstone in a week's time, a 2-hour endurance race at the legendary British circuit. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but I love Silverstone. It's one of my favourite tracks, so I think it'll be fun.
Well, we definitely look forward to seeing you out there. But until then, congrats once again on the 2 wins tonight. Brilliant driving, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
See ya.
All the best. Well, brilliant drive there from Matt, and whilst he sounds very exhausted, I think very relieved and delighted at the performance between himself and his teammate, of course, of Billy Fletcher there. And they worked it very well together to finish P1 and P2. But now it's a case of really looking forward to the times ahead and what is possible at the British circuit in a week's time. But that brings all of the racing action to a conclusion tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out at the Next Gen Racing website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk, or our official Facebook group, that is facebook.com/groups, Next Gen Racing. And also, once again, I'd just like to give a big thank you, and we'd like to give a big thank you to our partners, Apex Racing Academy, that's apexracingac.com, and Next Level Racing, that's nextlevelracing.com, without whom this would not be possible. And we love to bring you this racing action in collaboration with our senior partners. Indeed, as mentioned in the interviews just there, next time we head to the British racing circuit of Silverstone. You won't want to miss it. Round 6 on Wednesday, the 25th of August 2021. And as we can see right now in the footage here, with the Ferrari making its way around the legendary British circuit, which compromises positions from an old World War II airfield, it's going to be a 2-hour endurance special. Both the 6th and the 12th rounds do not follow the standard formula of being the sprint and feature races. It is a single 2-hour endurance race, and one you will not want to miss. You can expect there's going to be plenty of battling, and also it is going to be a huge test of the strategic fortitude and mettle of our drivers. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Be sure to come back in a week's time for Silverstone. Remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly in the meantime, remember to stay on track. For I've been TX141 or Paul Walsh or Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. We've been Next Gen Racing. This has been the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championship Season 2 on iRacing. And I bid you all a lovely evening.